checking. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Everything EOS Livestream for January 31st. I'm your host, Steph. Excited to be back, rocking some classic EOS swag for today. And yeah, it's good to be back. It's been a while. It's been, like 7 weeks since our last show. Next one won't be that long between shows. And yeah, let's see some hype in the chat. We're going to wait a couple minutes before we get started. Wait for everyone to roll on in here. So introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And throughout the show, if you've got questions, reactions to the segments, of course, drop them in the chat. We'll be monitoring them, trying to address as many as we can. All right, lots of familiar faces in the chat. Love seeing it. We got Yana, Nova Crypto, Martin, ENF account in the chat, of course. Watch out for that account. It'll be dropping relevant links all throughout the show. We got Ruaid, Andrew in here, Max Joe. Welcome, guys. All right, we'll hang out for just another minute, maybe. Wondering what you guys have been up to last 7 weeks. Did anyone do anything interesting? Anyone go on vacation or anything like that? I myself am going on vacation, actually. Going to Mexico tomorrow. This is my last day, taking a week off. Literally driving to the city right after this show. Gonna catch my flight tomorrow. Germany checking in with Martin. What's up? Hey Mel, how's it going? Brendan Lovejoy in the chat. All right, so before we get started, quick reminder, there's a new EOS Global Telegram group. I don't know if you're in there, but there's over 12,000 people in there. Make sure you head on over to Telegram /EOS_global/1 to join this new chat that's popping off every day on Telegram. Lots of prizes to be won today, actually. We had the EOS Moments promo wrap up earlier today. Hundreds of EOS were sent out to the NFT holders who are holding the full set. We've got a dev challenge coming up later today. 1,000 EOS going to be up for grabs this time. And also some Pomelo bounties, news, and prizes to be won. So make sure to stay tuned in the live chat. There's some contests. You can only join in the live chat. Others, you'll be able to join throughout the week. All right, so here's what in store for today. We'll start off with the EOS Ecosystem Spotlight. Then we'll head on over to the Big Beard Banter section with Yves and Zack. Then we'll talk some general industry news, followed up with some Fireside chats and some EOS developer news with Nathan. So let's get this show started. But before we do, let's see some engagement on there. Drop a like, drop a subscribe, share a retweet, do all the things. Help make this show as good as it can be. All right, so let's head on over to our first segment of the day, the EOS Ecosystem Spotlight. So this section is completely community submitted. So we've got, I think, 9 stories today to cover all of those submissions from the community. If you want to be featured on this show, make sure to submit your news through the form that Liam's going to share in the chat. All right, let's get into it. There we go. First up on the docket, we got some news from, well, actually, before we get into news from Neutroswap, I want to announce a Pomelo Bounties contest. So Pomelo Bounties went live this week. You can put up a bounty on the Pomelo Bounties platform and put up some USDT associated to it. Whoever comes in, complete the bounty, can claim that prize. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna hand out a $100 USDT gift certificate for anyone who wants to put up a bounty. The team at Pomelo Bounties will put up the money for you. So to enter this contest during this segment, during the ecosystem news segment, let us know in the chat what you would put up a Pomelo bounty for. That's all you got to do. We got Andrew there watching for entries. He'll note that down. We'll randomly draw the winner at the end of the show. So ecosystem news segment, let us know in the comments what you would use a Pomelo bounty gift certificate for. All right, Our first news of the day, Neutroswap version 2 launched on the EOS EVM mainnet. Neutroswap has launched its second iteration, offering more utility for its native token, as well as introducing a locked version of the native token. The platform features various ways for users to engage, including a dividend plugin, yield booster plugin, and Launchpad plugin. Neutroswap version 2 also revamped its yield farming mechanism, bringing more composability to the LP tokens. You can learn more about Neutroswap at neutroswap.io. Love to hear actually this update because I was on a Twitter space with these guys, I think in September, and they were talking about the upcoming launch of version 2. So glad to see that's now live and running on the EOS EVM mainnet. Well done to the Neutro team. Next up, we got some news from the EOS Bees. Swarm version 3 is live. So version 3 was recently released. You can grow your digital community and take advantage of the following new features. Likes, shares, and comments can be all ordered separately. AI assisted comments, as well as the ability to pay the bees in your own token. So you can learn more about the bees and Swarm v3 in the links shared in the chat. All right, next up, EZswap brand evolves following a 500K investment from the ENV. So the EZswap protocol has evolved in a big way over the last month, following a strategic investment of $500,000 from EOS Network Ventures. Notably, EZswap protocol has undergone an epic rebrand and will be unveiling a number of ways that users can engage with the platform while being rewarded for doing so. EZswap is set to introduce an NFT perpetual contract market to increase community engagement and participation in NFT project. So learn more how you can engage with EZswaps in the links shared below, or visit EZswap.io to get in on the action. All right, next up, we've got news from PlayZap with an offer for $1 million in grants for game developers. So PlayZap is making big moves with plans to add 6 new games to their platform, expanding their library to 15 plus games. They also plan to launch a publisher program for Web2 developers, offering a $1 million grant to help convert games into Web3 using the PlayZap SDK. Launching a web version of their platform, allowing users to play games seamlessly on desktop, PlayZap is bringing gaming to Telegram, making it accessible to 800 million users directly on the platform without the need for downloads. Very cool. Learn more at playzap.games and in the links in the chat. All right, next up, we got some DeFi action with Noah DeFi ecosystem expanding following a $2.4 million investment from the ENV. Noah, a next generation decentralized exchange, recently secured a $2.4 million strategic investment from EOS Network Ventures. Noah is already a leading DeFi on EOS EVM with involvement in the Inscription market and BTC L2 DeFi initiative. The investment from ENV will play an important role in unlocking new potentials for growth, innovation, and collaboration in DeFi on EOS and within the broader Web3 ecosystem. So join the Noah Telegram to connect with the community and explore Noah DeFi platform at NoahArk.io. All right, EOS 20 Launchpad Echo is now live, enabling ERC20 inscription transformation. The Echo Launchpad has recently received several epic back-to-back releases. This includes a Launchpad that allows anyone to create smart inscriptions, as well as the launch of a community around it. Echo has also released a feature that allows users to turn their smart inscription into an ERC20 token. This enables Echo to be traded within a DEX. Any other inscription project leveraging the Launchpad can also unlock this feature for their project. So head on over to the Echo platform shared in the chat to learn more. All right, PayCash wallet launches virtual cards service. So PayCash, a secure and anonymous wallet built on EOS, recently added the ability to issue and refill virtual cards with USDT on the EOS network, as well as on Tron. This new feature aims to improve the user experience for DeFi users in the EOS ecosystem. The fee for issuing a virtual card is $10, and after issuing a virtual card, 1% of the amount of all spending transactions will be charged. Also, the biggest dApps in the EOS PayCash ecosystem have been added to blocks.io, allowing users to track important growth metrics related to various projects. And next up, the Antelope Swiss Workshop number 24 coming up on February 19th. That's right. Swiss Workshop number 24 is all about diving deep into the technical side of Web 2 and Web 3 interoperability. Subscribe to EOS Den for the upcoming interviews featuring EOS Den team, EOS Bees, and Hi-Fi DAO. Every video is released with in-depth notes, timestamps, podcast summaries, and mind mapping. Check them out to learn how Web 3 can help Web 2 customers collaborate in a trustless way. Follow them on X at Nova Crypto Ltd and subscribe to their YouTube to be notified of future episodes. All right, and like I mentioned at the top of the show, the EOS Moments NFT collection promotions has just ended. If you were holding the full set, you should have received your latest prizes earlier today, so you can check your account to see if you've got how much prizes you earned this month for holding the full set of EOS Moments. All right, there we go. That's gonna wrap it up for today's EOS Ecosystem Spotlight. Remember, all of these submissions are community submissions. Make sure to submit your project updates to be included next month on the Everything EOS live stream. All right. So at this point, we're going to move on to, let me go back to my office before I invite over Yves and Zack to join me on stage for my favorite segment of the show, the Big Beard Banter.
Hey. Got some groove in the background. Yeah.
What's up, guys?
What up?
Welcome to the stream. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Zach, how you doing? I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah. I like this first segment. It was pretty good. I mean, this is only the second time we do this format, right? But it's really cool that obviously all of the submissions are from the community, so get a bunch of updates there. It's kind of a promotional spot for people. So obviously, if you've got something that you want to showcase, reach out, look at the chat. There's a form there. It's pretty good. This is free advertisement, and ideally, it actually helps boost people participating in your projects, which is really cool.
There you go. Yeah. And now I'm going to leave you guys to it, and we'll listen in to you guys talk about the latest news in the EOS ecosystem over the last almost 2 months now. I'll be taking some notes, and then I'll come back at the end of the segment, share maybe some of my thoughts on what you guys were discussing.
Awesome.
All right. So we're just so everyone's aware, we have 2 segments of this. We will be breaking it up. So this first one, because it's been 6 or 7 weeks since the last live stream, a lot of things happened since then. We'll hit on some of those. And also I've got a couple of comments on some of the news that Steph just mentioned. So one being the Pomelo bounties. So just went live. The very first Pomelo bounty actually also went live. So I believe Denis from EOS Nation posted it for a new feature on EOSeyes.io, which is a great data analytics site for tracking RAM markets, especially on EOS. It's the best one, but it tracks a lot of other things. And just as a heads up to the EOS community, I'll be posting some bounties over the coming couple of weeks, mainly in regards to content bounties. So if you want to write user guides for the EOS community, or maybe give your take on certain things that are going on, like the inscriptions or the RAM or the different game projects that are launching or have launched. So look for that because we do want to ramp up the user guides and make them as accessible as possible. So we'll be doing that. And also, I just want to shout out PayCash, actually, because they were the last piece of news there. And I got a chance to use their wallet the other day for the first time. And as far as like a user, wow, you even got a graphic ready. I didn't even tell you I was going to talk about this. But yeah, so as far as like user onboarding, I was just talking about it with the Pomelo bounties, because just having really good guides with lots of screenshots of how to do simple things like create EOS accounts, power up your resources, do things like that, because there's multiple wallets. So you need multiple guides a lot of times, or link out to the wallets if they have their own guides. But PayCash, man, they're doing it. I highly recommend people at least check it out just to see what great user experience looks like on the EOS blockchain. They completely abstract the account creation, make it really easy, manage your resources for you. They've got a swap, and the news today was just the credit card thing. So just shout out to them. Yves, did you want to comment on any of the news that we just covered, or do you want to jump into the agenda?
Let's just jump in. I mean, I kept getting messages in the background, so I wasn't even paying attention to what you were saying. You know, for being very candid, so I wouldn't be able to choose option 1. Let's go to option 2.
All right. So the first thing on the agenda is just to look back on 2023, and rather than regurgitating you all of the things that happened, we've posted a lot of content to the EOSnetwork.com blog. So it was a look back on 2023. It was crazy reading the content that Liam, who's in the background doing the production right now, taking a look back at everything that happened in 2023, from the EVM launch to standing up EOS Labs to standing up EOS Network Ventures, the first few investments from EOS Network Ventures, the Japan regulatory approval. There's just so much that happened in 2023. Liam, you could drop the link in the chat, link in the description. But rather than going through every item, just letting you know that this exists and to check it out. There was also an excellent report from Messari. So Messari is a top data analytics research firm in the blockchain space. This is their, not sure if it's their 4th quarterly report or their 5th one on EOS, but they've been doing them consistently. And we saw some major quarter-over-quarter growth metrics. So that doesn't mean we've reached where we want to go yet as far as usage and adoption. But when you compare Q3 to Q4, I'll just call out some metrics. So there's a 30,000% growth on EOS EVM transactions. A lot of that was due to the inscriptions really taking off late in Q4, and also how Q3 was a little bit slow due to the multi-chain bridge and other issues that happened there. There was 1,200% quarter-over-quarter growth in new EOS EVM addresses created, 3,000% quarter-over-quarter TVL growth on EOS EVM, 25% quarter-over-quarter TVL growth on native, 222% quarter-over-quarter growth on Rex. So the revenue, as far as chain revenue, really took off. I've got more stats in the bullet points, but honestly, you're better off just checking out the Messari report, which is linked to in the comments and the description. So we had some big milestones.
Actually, let's go back to the Messari report, because some people had questions about that in the elites group. If you're not in the elites group, you should try to join. There's a minimum requirement of 10,000 EOS that does get checked, or 10,000 EOS or more equivalent, because some people have RAM. And we'll get to that RAM later. But back to Messari, obviously you just named a bunch of really high percentages, right? And so if we went from 1 transaction to 30 transactions, that's, it looks percentage-wise, looks high, it looks terrible still. So, take it with a grain of salt. The percentages obviously are inflated if you're starting from a very low point. But when we look at, for example, the one you mentioned, Rex income, well, that percentage is actually quite valuable, because yes, I think you mentioned it's 222% or give or take, but we had movement, but then we saw a significant increase in movement that makes it that the Rex income is actually quite juicy. It was quite nice for the period of time where we see some movement there. And so, it's really important to note, obviously percentages look inflated if you're starting from a low point, but we are starting to see some of that traction in key areas when it comes to transactions on chain. The other thing to mention about Messari is that they are, let's say, data neutral. They look at the chain, so we obviously work with them, but they report it as is. And so they're not looking at this from trying to make EOS look better or look good or look bad. They're simply reporting what they see as a third party, a completely neutral third party. And so some of the stuff in there might not look good or might look good. It's important to note that they're just reporting back on what they see. They're not placing judgment on what they see, right? So it's very different. We're not commissioning this. They are completely on their own writing this. They then reach out and ask if we have any clarifications, if something's inaccurate. Outside of that, it is completely third-party neutral reporting back on the EOS chain.
Yep, and I'm glad you brought that up. And that's kind of why I started off with a caveat. It's not like we're at where we need to go, but we are competing against ourselves quarter over quarter. There was growth, but there needs to and will be and will continue to be a lot more growth. Glad you re-pointed out Rex, because that's a clear metric. The new revenue created through both power-ups for the inscriptions on EOS, and then a lot of the RAM.
Just the RAM market. I mean, RAM market as a whole, we've saw an influx of people purchasing RAM. And every time that there is a purchase or a sell of RAM at the protocol level, and the reason why I mentioned protocol is I don't believe that this applies to VRAM if it's currently something that's already in supply, unless it needs to pre-purchase. Anyways, I went a little too deep there. But with RAM, you get a 0.5% in, 0.5% out cost. And so if there's a double movement, that's 1% that's going to Rex. To give it concretely, when the ENF purchased a million EOS worth of RAM last week, that put 5,000 EOS in the pool, in the Rex pool. Putting that in perspective, I think on average for the last couple of years, we had maybe 150 to 200 EOS going daily in a 24-hour period in the Rex pool. And so we've seen that increase significantly. Obviously, some days more than others, but it is tangible. It's something very real that then in the end gets back and gets sent back to people who are participating in voter rewards most of the times in the voter proxies, or directly from the Rex if you're in Rex directly as well.
Yeah, I mean, just in the last couple of months, Rex went from offering less, like it was like 0.25% yield of this is native yield generated from fees from RAM and power ups, to now over 2% APR being added on top of voter rewards. So I know Nudex proxies offering like 7%. Some of the proxies on genpool.io, they're offering anywhere between 3 to 6% yield being generated, and that's all thanks to the increase on Rex. The last stat there that I want to point out that's relatively unbiased on the Messari report is that there's a 21% quarter over quarter growth in USDT. So USDT has been a staple as the de facto stable coin on the EOS blockchain on both native and EOS EVM. And seeing a 21% increase on that is good, because that's capital coming into the EOS blockchain, and Tether, the company, obviously controls where that goes from their exchange withdrawals to the EOS blockchain. So,
and of course, like you said, we're not where we want to be, but we've seen in the last couple of months, especially with EOS Labs and their target, and this is why they were set up and the way they were set up to be able to enable this type of interaction, these types of initiatives and such. We've seen very tangible results on chain in terms of what they bring to the table. And it's something that ENF couldn't do in the way that it is set up. And so as we move forward and we're basically architecting the design of what this looks like, labs, and what we're seeing with this data on chain that is highlighted by Messari report is a very direct one-to-one. This is what we're able to achieve when we head in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Just going to pull a comment up on the screen because I agree. I would like to see more videos done on RAM. So on the ENF blog, we just posted an article about RAM, because RAM's something that existed since 2019, whenever the chain launched, or 2018, I'm sorry. And when that happened, there was a ton of RAM content on the Bancor algorithm, the feed generation, but it had been a couple of years because it had stagnated for years. So there wasn't any new and relevant content. So when I'm talking to our partners and different media outlets, I'm talking about how RAM is currently one of the most exciting things happening on the EOS blockchain, but we needed that piece of reference content that just kind of brings people up to speed on how the market is even created, how the protocol owned liquidity is there. Pointed them to the DeFi Llama links, because DeFi Llama is tracking the TVL now. So we have an article on the EOSnetwork.com that's just very high level, but it would be great to see a lot more community generated content. We're already seeing community generated applications. For example, Nathan James, who's going to be on later, he's put out a demo app. He just released the code open source today. Aaron from Greymass has built some really cool tools, drops being one of them. I think that'll get talked about later also. But there's just, for the first time in a while, there's a lot of innovation happening. But I'll save a lot of this RAM discussion, because that's going to be in the next segment. We'll talk about RAM and the BTCL2. Because we went a little bit over on here, the other big things that happened, and there's always things happening, was we released Leap 5, so the network upgraded to Leap 5. Huge performance increases. I read a draft today that EOSphere wrote that we'll be co-publishing to the ENF blog and to the EOSphere Medium that talks about some of the real performance increases that we're seeing on the network, better availability and uptime. Anything you want to say on Leap 5 before we skip ahead?
I mean, some of the performance updates, right? So some people think code-wise, why does it matter? Well, there's some very concrete things that have occurred with 5.0 that we've seen being very beneficial to what we're doing right now, to the initiatives that are currently running. So let's take the inscriptions, for example, RAMs. I was speaking to Aaron from Greymass a few weeks back, and with Leap 5.0, when they've upgraded their nodes, the amount of data that could be put in one transaction increased significantly. So there was a few things that occurred here. There was a combination of lifting the cap of 30 milliseconds per transaction that was currently set. I think that's now at 300 milliseconds. And so that adds a lot of computing power that can go behind each transaction. What does that mean? Well, I'll give you a concrete example. So for me, RAMs, I minted roughly 3 million RAMs. I did a little over 3 million. In order to be able to do so, every transaction that I was pushing had 1,000 different transcriptions inside. Basically, I was doing like 1,000 at a time. And rough estimate, when Aaron tested it, he was able to push some, very rarely, but he was able to push some that had 25,000 per time. And maybe more average would be something like 10 to 15,000 is probably more realistic. Prior to this upgrade, we would not have been able to do that. So it means that if you're trying to do something on chain, it would have either required more clicks, more time, more CPU, like whatever it is, just more resources and more of your time to be able to do the same thing. And so this just opens up the possibilities of what can be done way more optimized than what it was before. From a BP point of view, why that's important, I guess from a token holder point of view as well, you're able to do more with the same hardware. And so you're able to push more through, your hardware is able to last longer, which means cost-wise, there's less cost bearing on the BPs, which means they can last longer, and that cost doesn't get transferred over to the token holders as quickly. So obviously taking the same hardware and optimizing it through software optimization actually does bring benefits to the end user, even though they might not know directly or they might not know how. It does make a difference. And with 5.0, we've got some major upgrades that then position us for 6.0. And I don't know if 6.0 is in this segment or in the next one. But like 5.0 is key for 6.0. So what we've just released now really sets us up for what's coming, and what's coming is a huge one. It is a hard fork, and I don't know, should I continue now or should I wait for later?
Let's save it, because we have a couple other things in this segment. I want to, because we had two major ENV announcements. I want to make sure we hit on those. The other thing I wanted to talk about is just EOS EVM 0.7 is live. Big things, WebSockets, mainly for developers. So if you're a developer, this is probably really important to you. If you're not a developer, you probably won't notice much, except better applications can deploy now. The other thing is more tokens added to the bridge. So just this week, MLNK, the PaySwap or PayCash token and checks were added to the trustless bridge. There's also been BRAM, Box, USN. So a lot of tokens, pretty much Zeos, every pretty much token with liquidity on
Banana. Gotta shout out Banana. To the monkeys. Yeah.
Yep. But I do want to get into ENV, because a lot of the stuff we've talked about so far, we've already covered numerous times on the blog and the chats. And I know we've covered the EZswap and the Noah collaboration and ENV investment. But I like how you can give some extra insight into how these deals kind of came to fruition, how long they took, how it was negotiated for the best deal for the network, how the network is going to get ROI on it, because the ENV is not a charity. It is meant to get return on its capital so that it can continuously reinvest, getting its principal back through all of the, or more through all of the investments. So I'll start with the first investment that was announced, and that was EZswap. So I guess, how did EZswap come to fruition? Like, what is EZswap? I'll just leave it open for you.
So I'll even take it kind of one step back to give it a little bit of context as a whole in terms of what ENV is, what Labs is, because there's still, I think, some misunderstandings there, and how both of them play together. How the NF is there's obviously some linkages between the three play within the EOS ecosystem and they fulfill key roles, right? So I'm putting my ENV hat on. When the ENV was formed, it at the very beginning created a fund number one. So ENV is a partnership. So a fund has very strict rules on what it can do. It's a partnership between different parties and such. So it's not an entity per se. And typically, when you create a fund and with all the structures around the fund, you have a certain amount of the fund's monies that can be used for administrative purposes, whether it be legal, marketing, payroll, whatever it may be. Typically a standard, and this is what this is in this case, is a 2%. Now, if you've got in this case, it was a $20 million fund that was created, 2% of that is 400K. So theoretically, you have 400K per year that you can apply to administrative purposes. 400K really doesn't get you very far when you're thinking of you want to run a fund and such. And so instead of applying that 400K and hiring people within the ENV, what we decided to do instead, because there were other reasons for this, is basically Labs fulfills the same function that you would have internal to the ENV, but outside of the ENV. So it doesn't cost anything to the ENV. What I mean by that is typically a fund would receive, and a fund would be set up in a way that it would receive pitch decks. And it would then analyze the pitch decks and determine what it's going to invest in. In this case, what we did with, because we have the possibility, because of these three entities, we're able to split up some of the work because it still fits within the mandate of the other entity. There's definitely overlap in certain things. And so in this case, Labs is the entity that receives all the decks on behalf of the ENV. Labs is set up, it has staff, and it has the proper skill sets in-house to be able to review decks. And so because they are the organization that is more the incubator focused, the external application layer / BD arm of the network. And so it is interacting with the outside world. It is looking at the ecosystem as a whole and looking at what's missing in terms of the ecosystem and kind of determining, all right, we need one of these, we need one of these. There's no sense if we have 7 of these. Oh, but we do need one of these. Oh, and if you have these things together, they actually work very well together. So that requires some architecting in the beginning, right? If we look at a comparison, when we had Pomelo, for example, you're waiting for people to apply and tell you what they'll work on. And if the thing that you're looking for never gets applied for, then you're never going to end up getting it. And you may end up getting 6 of the same, but you only needed 1. There's no sense. Or maybe you have this one function, but without this other function, this function doesn't come to life, right? So Labs is very much set up to be able to help the network achieve that. And so it reviews the decks, the pitch decks when they come in, and then with their methodology, then passes things along to the ENV for the ENVs to make decisions on investment. And so EZswap came through the Labs, I guess, methodology. So they come in through that process. And EZswap really fits within a larger ecosystem of functions, right? And so when we look at this is distracting because text is moving on the screen. When we look at reasons to make an investment, you mentioned it, right? This is not a charity, and so this is not, you're not investing in a product and just giving them free money. That's not how it works. Plus, an investment is also, I think, just to correct some people, you don't then own that product. So you're not, in this case, I saw some comments, people saying, well, you gave 500K. Why can't they do this tomorrow? Well, it doesn't really work that way. You're already investing in an entity, in a team, and they have some functions. They already have a product. They're not taking the money you're giving them today and then developing something new tomorrow. It doesn't work that way.
They did take the feedback, though.
Roadmap. Yeah, of course.
But they just launched the new UI today.
Already existing entity, right? And in this case, we mentioned it's a 500K investment. What's really important with investments too is looking at, are other people looking to invest in this product? Does this product appeal to more than just yourself? And so in this case, ENV was the lead investor for EZswap. It is a key function that we believe is needed. And so we've got, we're looking at infrastructure, and I don't mean infrastructure as in just, base layer infrastructure, but infrastructure for an ecosystem. So a swap, a marketplace, an NFT marketplace, a DEX, those key functions that are infrastructure functions, EZswap comes and fills in a really important one. And what they brought to the table that was really important is, one is we're the lead investor, so we made a 500K investment, but there were other investors there as well. So they raised a little over $1 million. That money was not raised from the ENV, that was raised from other people as well, right? So it showcases that we're not the only ones that believe that this has value. And then from the EZswap, what it brought to the table, outside of obviously other external investment, which is really important. So that investment benefits EOS, of course, paid for by other entities that see the value in this function. They have a lot of partnerships. So the EZswap model is very much a B2B, where they partner with different games, different applications, who then leverage EZswap for its function. And so when what we have with EZswap now is a network of other games, of other applications, of other things that now can be benefited, and EOS can benefit from those things. Relationship with exchanges, relationships for listings, they were pretty strong at that. And just overall outreach to applications, games, and such that we didn't have contact with, that now have a reason. Now we have a common incentive. We've got a common application. And so it opens up a lot of possibilities. So I did sign one that I mentioned in Elite's, I think it was about a week ago. I signed another deal that came through that. So it's another introduction that we got from EZswap. That's going to be a game. It's going to be launching on EOS. It's already on another network. So they're adding EVM, there are EVM compatible. They're adding our EVM as part of their layer. So EZswap was a key fundamental, I guess, infrastructure play for us that opens up a lot of other doors. If you have, for example, all these games and their assets can't be traded anywhere, you're missing a function, right? So there's method to how Labs is trying to architect these investments, and who we're looking for in terms of potential partners. And it's very methodical, one by one, like one step at a time. This is the first ones you've seen are very core, they're very key. And I guess that brings us to the second one, to Noah.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Noah,
just real quick. So Noah, more people are probably familiar with Noah because it's been around longer. It's your typical DEX and AMM. Like you trade ERC20s. And Defibox, everyone's very familiar with Defibox. You trade the native tokens. But what didn't exist was NFT trading. We didn't. If we're talking about games and we want to attract games use NFTs. What do you do with the NFTs? You need a marketplace, and EZswap brings automated market making to NFTs, which makes them more liquid, more tradable. So yeah, just basically seeing what the pieces are. We don't need 10 dexes necessarily. We don't need 10 NFT marketplaces, but you do need at least one anchor. And then you could build more. Like we saw Neutroswap is still innovating. Just because Noah had this announcement to ENV, it doesn't mean that other dexes can't exist. So yeah, let's jump in now.
Well, full transparency on there, Neutroswap is actually funded through the grant framework. And so they had applied through the grant framework, were approved a long time ago. So these latest developments that you've seen are actually paid by the network as well, but to a certain extent for this functionality. And going back a little bit on EZswap, when we look at, because of the functionality that it provides, we had inscriptions on EOS as well. EZswap was able to right away add one of those inscriptions on there, right? If we didn't have this function, we would not have been able to do that. Of course, you can complain about the UI and the usability and such, and great, there's a way to do that, and they're looking at improving. But that functionality would not even have been possible if we didn't have those core functions, right? And so there's many different things that can make an investment worthwhile. Obviously, one of them being the usability, UI, UX. Obviously, being financial viability. Can they even run a company? The main thing is, can they bring back a return? Do they have a token as an equity play, a token play? Listings? Do they have marketing? Do they have? There's a lot of different things. And of course, it'd be great if they're 100% everything. Those are far few in between. And so, you're looking at, well, they're really strong at this, weak at this, great, let's work here. Or maybe this is not relevant, and actually let's just focus on these things. It's not as black and white as you might think. But overall, I think they've shown some really good support for EOS, and they're continuing to try and show support for EOS, and that our investment was worthwhile. They're really trying to make this showcase that this is good, and they want us to be good, right?
Noah
took a long time. Noah was it took a very long time. So as you saw, we announced the $2.4 million investment. $2.4 million had not been given, so there are milestones in there. And so they have the capacity to unlock $2.4 million worth of investment if they actually complete some key milestones, and they've got a time frame to complete those milestones in. And so the network on its side, from the ENV point of view, has received all of the equity and will receive all the equity and all the tokens regardless of those milestones. So if they hit those milestones, they unlock more capital. If they do not hit those milestones, we still get what we are to be given regardless, right? So when we do these investments as well, we've been able to structure them very favorably for the network, in large part because that's the market that we're in right now. It's been a very difficult, last couple of years. And so those with capital actually have way more leverage in negotiations. If you want to see a really good example of that, go look at the Spirit Blockchain Capital investment that we announced. Because Spirit Blockchain Capital is a publicly traded company, those basically the terms of investment had to be made public, and so they are public, so everybody can go look. That gives you an idea of the level and the depth of negotiation that we're entering into, and kind of the back and forth that is required to even get to a point where people agree on terms. With Noah, that process lasted almost a year. It was a very, very long. And we saw with the investment Noah, you got the Noah and Defibox merge. Obviously, there's still some issues there. We all know of the issues that people are facing with Defibox in terms of WARF compatibility or Anchor compatibility. And those are being addressed. Like, yes, those will be addressed. Some of it take time. Apologize for that. They've been highlighted. We know that, they know that, and it is a priority. But as with everything else, it's prioritization of priorities. And so really, really happy with the Noah investment. Obviously, Noah/Defibox cornerstone, less so Noah because they're more new, but Noah Defibox cornerstone of the DeFi ecosystem in EOS. Took a very long time to get to a point where we were comfortable with the terms. It is a combination of equity, of tokens, and obviously some external investment as well, yet to be announced by other investors. This is one thing that we really wanted to get right with Noah, which is why it took so long to do. But really, really happy with that and all of the terms that are there. And we really believe it positions Noah/Defibox for the next foreseeable future to be able to succeed, properly funded, with opening of other doors and other potential opportunities like exchange listing, that kind of thing.
So you mentioned other investors. So this deal does stand out as unique. So Upland had a lot of other investors. Spirit Blockchain had other investors. EZswap had another collectively equal investor. This deal was the only ENV deal that's been announced that didn't have a co-investor. Could there be a co-investor in the future?
For sure. And I can tell you that those talks are already happening. So one of the things I think I'd mentioned before, but when we set up the first fund, we wanted to seek also external investment, so that what you now know, or what you knew at the time as the EFM, because it wasn't registered yet, didn't have a name. So the actual registration name, now the legal entity, is called Antelope Investment Fund, is the LP currently for the ENV. But the idea is to set things up so that you could have other LPs. It's kind of a chicken or egg / a double-edged sword situation, going back to this idea of administering a fund. When you start accepting external investment into a fund, now you have reporting obligations. You've got to put out your NAV report every quarter, every month, that type of thing. And so those have administrative costs to do. And so it's a question of, well, is the fund large enough to be able to justify the costs? And we just can't justify the cost. And so even though we want to be able to receive further investment, it's just not worthwhile right now at the size of the fund to be able to do so. But we do have interest from people who wanted to invest because they're looking at, I want to invest in the EOS ecosystem. I don't know really what to invest in. You have all the deal flow. You are in a better position to be able to make those judgments. How can we collaborate? And so the approach we've taken for the last, I guess, 6 to 8 months or so is we do have other people who have capital that are investing in the EOS ecosystem, but instead of investing through the ENV, they just invest directly. Some of them we've been able to combine so that the news or the investment when it's made is all combined because it just timing aligns and we're capable of doing that. And for others, we're not capable of doing so. And so instead of delaying the investments, we're doing the investment. The other investors are doing this on their own. So it's not preventing one another, and this is currently happening with Noah and Defibox. And that's, I think, one of the most important things to know as well, is that a project can be really good from a tech point of view, but if it can't appeal to outside investors as well, it really doesn't do any good. So typically when you're a lead investor in something, obviously it depends on the size of the investment, but let's say we look at the Upland deal. For a concrete investment. So ENF was not the lead investor in there. We invested $1.5 million, but they were able to go get another 5.5 from other investors. There's a lead investor in there. The lead investor typically doesn't take more than a certain percentage. So it really doesn't give confidence to other investors when the lead investor, let's say, takes 80%, 90%. It makes no sense. So with an investment of that size, typically the lead investor will be capped at maybe 15 to 20%. In a smaller investment, maybe that can go up to 50% or so. But you want to try to get that low as much as possible. One as a hedge, you want to ensure that other people are also participating in this. That there's others that see the value in this, that others are, because part of the investment is not just the investment, it's also the resources that you bring to the investment outside of the capital itself. It's the networking, it's the technical capabilities, it's the other things that you can do as part of this partnership that is happening. So you want more people. You want more people at the table, more resources potential, right? And so it's very important as a metric to see, are there other people investing in this thing? Are there other people that potentially could invest in this thing? Very, very important. And so there's a big focus of ours as well. So we look at previous investors, look at post investors, what they're looking at, what the previous rounds were. It's actually quite complex. And there's somewhat of a science to this. Like, this is quite vanilla. There are people that do this all the time, and we're running this as others have been running this. Like, there's a formula to be able to do this within the realm that we operate in, right? So we've got very specific mandate. We've got a very specific target of what we're looking for. Within there, then we start operating. What you're seeing so far come out is a result of that.
Thanks, Andrea. So yeah, we ran through the first round of topics. The most juicy topics we saved for the end. So we'll have a couple segments in between. We'll close out with Yves and I again. Please ask questions in the live chat. I'll be saving some of the best ones. We could maybe respond to some of them at the end. But we'll be talking about instant finality, Bitcoin layer 2 on EOS, and also some dive deeper into all of the things going on with RAM, and maybe even some more on Inscription, since we didn't really get to dive into the Inscription activity during this segment. So I think we're doing some industry-wide news. Steph, you want to come back onto the screen? Whoa!
And he's not
there.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, no,
now he's gone.
Hey guys.
Back.
EOS is the settlement layer, Patrick. That is true. It's the data availability and settlement layer.
Yeah, Huachan's been calling it the data availability layer. I was going to say lately, in the last 12 hours.
If you go back into our chat, I don't know if it is in our call notes, Yves, or if it is in our Telegram chat. I brought up data availability months ago, but I still don't understand it enough. So I'm glad Huachang's been digging into it, because I do think that EOS is a data availability layer.
I don't know if Steph is here, because I see him just frozen, but I do hear music. So another advertisement: if you're not in EOS Elites and you hold more or equivalent or more than 10,000 EOS, you should reach out and try to get in that channel. It's a very good channel on Telegram. With Telegram Premium, you have access to real time translation. And so we've got, for the first time in years, a channel where we've got people from all over the world speaking in real time in their own language, and you're able to read in your own language. And the quality of the chat there is quite good. And you know that the other people that you're talking with have skin in the game, which makes a very big difference. It helps when times can be difficult, or when there's some arguments that pop up, knowing that the other person you're talking to at least has skin in the game with you makes a very big difference. And we see that arguments are resolved much quicker than they are elsewhere. And the quality of the discussion is just so much better in general.
How do we join Elites?
You have to have more than 10,000 EOS equivalent or more. And then if you want, I guess, message Zack. And there's a process. It's basically at Fank Woo. You can message Fank Woo. Let me post that in chat. And he's the gatekeeper, basically. This is not an EF channel. This is not a thing from us. This is something that the community created and joined, and it's just a high quality channel.
My favorite part about it is it's the only EOS channel. One, everyone's got skin in the game, proven skin in the game, and everyone speaks in their own language, and everyone can still understand each other, because almost everyone in there pays like $4 or $5 a month for Telegram Premium. It automatically translates the entire chat into your language. Some people are speaking English, Chinese, Korean, Russian, but you're only typing in your own language and reading in your own language. It's awesome.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Sorry, Stan.
I think I'm back. I'm on my backup connection. I think I had a bit of connection problems there, but that was a great segment, guys. If you enjoyed the segment, leave a like, leave a subscribe, share this on Twitter, help support the show. So real quickly, just a couple comments here. Obviously, the Masari report was great. Some great stats that you guys highlighted. I did appreciate, Yves, your statistical honesty there. Not just pumping the 12,000% or whatever, but
one of them was like 30,000%. Yes, but if you go from 1 to 300 or 1 to 30, that's 30,000. I
know you've got a deep appreciation for statistics, so that was a nice disclaimer. Richard Hart could learn a thing or two. I love the little teaser on RAM. Love the teaser on RAM. Looking forward to Big Beard segment number 2 later on the show, where we'll learn more. In the meantime, I'll enjoy watching the parabolic RAM chart. ENV investments, that was some great updates. Love hearing about the eco infrastructure with the swap and Noah. Specifically for Noah, it was interesting learning about the terms of the deal. And I was wondering if there's more information around those terms. You did mention one of the deals was public, but others, I imagine, are not. So I'm just wondering specifically for Noah if there's more details available for that deal.
Give or take, off the cuff, the terms are quite long, but give or take, it's 10% equity, 15% worth of tokens, and then other small things here and there. There's like a component where we actually revise. We it's not that we're on the board, but we effectively like review all of the finances. So we've got an arms there to be able to ensure that the direction of the company is financially anyway sound from our point of view. They absorb Defibox, they merge, so we get the equivalent in Defibox effectively. But yeah, it's a combination of equity and tokens, and give or take 10 to 15% of ownership.
I was just glad the news finally came out. It is seriously,
but then it's like vested over time, and like but that's general idea, yeah. And yes, we worked on this for a very, very, very long time.
And seeing all the community comments, why aren't you doing anything for Defibox? It's like trying to make it happen.
Trying to get this done. It just took a really long time.
All right, so let's transition over to the next segment, industry news, where we'll talk a bit about Web3 and just greater crypto news. Couple topics to discuss today, mostly the Bitcoin ETF. Obviously, that's been dominating the news cycle in the last month. But before we get to that, some breaking news today, actually. Wanted to get your take and Zack and Yves, but also everyone in the chat. Get those zeros and those ones ready. I want to see response to that. So FTX customer repayment was announced today. FTX expect to repay crypto customers in full.
Fiat value.
based on the price of Bitcoin of like, I don't know, 17,000 or something ridiculous. So is this good news or bad news? 0 in the chat if this is bad news, 1 in the chat if this is good news. And I want to get your takes on it, Zack and Yves.
I mean, it could have been a lot worse. It's good news. I mean, it's bad news if you would have been better off holding your keys, holding your crypto.
Okay, yeah, you would have been better off not participating in FTX, but you can't go back in the past.
Exactly.
And so is this the best news that you could have gotten, considering that you participated in a huge scam? It's actually not that bad, considering you're getting something out of it. And I'll make a parallel to, what is it? Quadriga in Canada. So Steph is aware of this. Like, Quadriga people are left without funds, and it's been way longer than FTX, and they still have not gotten anything. And so, sure, is this like, are you comparing garbage against garbage? Yes, both are garbage. So if you're able to get something, it's better than nothing. And if you're able to get something in full, despite it being at a lower valuation, you're still able to get something. A lot of people were thinking they were getting absolutely nothing out of this.
But we'll see how long it takes. There is precedent to this whole getting your fiat value back. Mt. Gox, they have still not gotten their settlement. But even when they do, it's based on fiat value of Bitcoin in 2013.
It's like $600 or something, eh? Yeah.
I mean, I believe this will be settled sooner rather than later. Like, I don't think you're going to wait 9 years or 10 years because of the high profile nature of FTX. I mean, this went up to the highest courts in the US. Like, this is a big deal. I don't think it's the same as Mt. Gox or Quadriga in this case. To just, apples to oranges, just not the same. Yes, it sucks. But let's look at the industry and how many times people have lost funding to frauds like that or mismanagement, and they've gotten nothing. I mean, just look at Terra, for example. There's
people that had their whole life savings in there. FTX was asking their investments to keep their treasury on FTX, basically.
Dude, it's not just FTX was asking that. You've got like celebrities endorsing this. You had people, media was endorsing this. Politicians were endorsing this. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they really had a choice but to come up with some kind of settlement that would actually make people whole, regardless of whether people say, well, I'm not whole because the price of Bitcoin increased since then or the assets increased since then. But I do believe it is good. Ultimately, I do believe it is good.
Yep. And not everyone deposited at 60K Bitcoin either. Like, some of those deposits could have been 25K Bitcoin when it filed bankruptcy is 16, 17. So it's a loss for sure. Not ideal for everyone, but losing 100% is not ideal either. This is a good thing.
Well, you theoretically lost 100%. You are at 0 right now.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who's there is currently at 0. So that's the baseline, right? You can't go back in time. Anyways.
What else is going on?
Yeah, another 1 or 0. I want to vote again.
We got some Bitcoin news. Let me step into my Bitcoin office here. Bitcoin ETF obviously has been dominating the news cycle. Let's go. Let's see those 1s and 0s again in the chat. Is the Bitcoin ETF a good thing for Bitcoin? 1 for yes, 0 for no. I know there's a lot of
1. Definitely
hold your keys bros out there that don't like TradFi getting a hold of so many Bitcoins, so close to government confiscating hands of these Bitcoins. Andrew, not a fan of the ETF. I think it's 1. I think it's
short-term thinking if you vote for 0. This legitimizes. So think of, if you've been here for a very long time, there's always those memes of every Christmas time or whatever, you're going to show up at family dinners and you're going to be the only person that has to explain to everybody why you're in Bitcoin. They think it's a scam and it's, the dark web and Silk Road, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've come a long way from that perception to having an ETF approved, which legitimizes the asset. Now, of course, this brings about some challenges. Of course, this also means that institutions are coming in, which means you as a small player are even smaller. And going forward, you're going to be even smaller. But if you're listening to this right now, you're likely not that small. You've been here for a while. And so this is actually, I think, in the long term, a really good thing for the industry, especially because the US drives a lot of regulation worldwide. We're already starting to see the Ethereum ETFs being positioned, and there's already breaking news / rumors that it's going to get approved, type of thing. Left to be seen. But as a whole, to legitimize the industry, this moves us one step closer to this is a real thing, and one step further from this is just a big scam. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are goods and bads that come with that, but ultimately I think it's better good than bad.
You mentioned the Ethereum ETF news happening. I saw some updates yesterday. It's pushing other country or other territories in this case. So Hong Kong as being like not pushing. I think they're going that direction anyway. But I saw more recent news of Hong Kong and launching ETFs, and not even just Bitcoin ETFs. So ETFs for other cryptocurrencies. So it's kind of accelerating all of that. I think
you guys think the ETH ETF will be approved in the US this year? Let's see in the chat. 1 for yes, 0 for no. ETH ETF this year in the US.
I don't know. I think while Gary's there, it might be tough, but we'll see.
I think yes, he's had a soft spot for, well, it's not his decision anyways, but he's had a soft spot for Ethereum from the beginning. I think even more than Bitcoin for some reason. I think it's a yes.
Well, he really liked Algorand. I saw some video of him from before he was with the SEC, speaking highly of them.
So one interesting piece of content I saw regarding, censorship resistance for Bitcoin via these Bitcoin ETFs from at BitPain on Twitter.
If only you weren't pixelated.
Basically,
Steph, sorry.
Yeah, what's up?
I was just going to say, did you know that EOS is working to scale Bitcoin with a layer 2?
I didn't. I look forward to learning about that later on in the show. But basically, he's saying that the Bitcoin ETF is going to help adoption become wider spread, which will increase censorship resistance, because now there's even more people that are going to be against government confiscation of Bitcoin. So I thought that was an interesting take there.
All of the different funds,
except all the different funds you're showing on screen are basically government insiders, or they're already the ones controlling. So I'm not guaranteed on that one. I'm not.
So they're all fighting for market share. So I was just at JFK Airport last week, and Grayscale and one, I can't remember what the other one was. I think it was the BlackRock one. There were 2 different ETF ads at the airport. You didn't see that before. They're fighting for market share. So it's advertising for Bitcoin, which is the entry point into the rest of the industry. So you're seeing them fight there. And then I wish I could remember which one it was, but one of them committed a certain percentage of all of their fees towards Bitcoin core development. So they're basically incentivizing development of Bitwise. So they're incentivizing core development.
Will take over. So I don't believe that it will further put it in the hands of more people. It will centralize more. It will centralize more.
Okay, another quiz. Let's see some ones in the chat. If you personally know someone that now owns Bitcoin that didn't before this ETF launched, I don't think we'll see many ones personally. Well, I mean, not in Canada. Obviously, we've been able to purchase Bitcoin ETF for a while now in Canada, but maybe for the Americans out there, curious.
This is a hard one because my realm is blockchain, and so how many people do I know that don't have any Bitcoin or any kind of crypto is somewhat limited. Yeah. And I think some of the people that do have some. So you're right. Actually, you brought up something really interesting. Canada has had Bitcoin ETF since February 2021. We were up until late December. Canada accounted for roughly 48% of all the Bitcoin ETF reserves. So it was roughly $2 billion. I don't know if Zack, you can post a link at that. I was asked to comment in a news article for this. Why this is interesting is that we do have a lot of statistics between Canada and US in terms of just ETFs in general, in terms of market sizes, etc. Go take a look at that article. It gives us an idea of the amount of capital that potentially could come into the ecosystem which addresses your question, Steph, of like how many new people. We've got metrics on that. So Canada typically is first at the ETF game. We've got really good metrics between Canada, ETFs and US ETFs. We have metrics on how much was in Bitcoin ETFs in Canada. So we can extrapolate a lot of that and get a rough range. And that rough range is between 40 to $60 billion extra that would come in from the outside. Obviously very small and $1 trillion market cap, but it's still extra capital coming in. And that doesn't account for everything else, which then is enabled because the US did that, right? So when the US makes a move, it gives confidence to a lot of other areas around the world that then make a move. So I know, going back to Hong Kong family offices, this idea of legitimizing an asset, now we're talking about the largest institutions, the Grayscale, BlackRock, that type of thing. But they're also, as part of that driver, eventually the smaller institutions, the family offices, the companies, the pension funds, that type of thing, which then look towards what is happening here to determine whether or not they have the risk appetite. And that risk appetite for crypto as a whole, specifically Bitcoin, has just gone down, even just a little notch, but from a point of extreme weight. And so I do believe, going back to this idea, it's extremely bullish for the industry. And we're going to see, I believe, a lot of external capital coming in to the blockchain ecosystem, most likely through Bitcoin, because that's typically the first door point of entry. And so it goes back to this idea of BTC-L2.
All right. Before we wrap up this segment, I got a couple pieces of content, which I'm calling Boomer FOMO, that I want to share with you guys. Boomer FOMO. Boomer. So this is actually just a good tracker, a good Bitcoin tracker that shows how many total Bitcoins held by all of the ETFs at this point. But here was an interview that I thought was really interesting, and it was released kind of very quickly right after the ETF was approved. Features Matt Hoogan, which is the CEO of Bitwise, the company we mentioned that is donating 5 or 10% of their fees to Bitcoin developers. Very cool. And it was great to see Matt talking about the industry. Obviously comes from TradFi space, but is a big believer and promoter of the crypto assets and crypto space. So that was a great interview. We also got to hear from Eric Balchunas from Bloomberg, who's an ETF specialist, all sorts of ETFs, lately been focused on the Bitcoin one. So they gave a lot of great insights in that interview. Another person I started following recently, James Seyfarth here. Basically, this guy's been posting updates like this every day. And a couple days ago, 2 days ago, he's like, I don't think I need to post these daily anymore, right? It's kind of the same thing every day. And since then, he's posted 9 updates. So 2 days ago, he thought he would slow down. However, he's just sped up. Same thing for Fred Krueger here, who is
you can't see it, stuff. You have to describe it.
You're so pixelated. We have no idea what you're showing.
Oh, no.
Your bandwidth right now, since you reconnected, it works, but you are a blur.
All right. So Fred Krueger is this guy, also self-proclaimed Bitcoin ETF maxi, and he's been doing podcasts leading up to the ETF launch. A lot of followers, obviously more attention he's ever gotten, probably, since now his specialty is just, it's cool to be an ETF pro, right? And then the day before the ETFs launch, he's like, I think I'm done doing these podcasts. Now the ETFs will launch, not as exciting. Also, ever since then, he's done more podcasts than less. So it's just kind of fun to see these kind of older TradFi people kind of going full out Bitcoin FOMO.
I like so full circle back, just to add and do a little shill. Spirit Blockchain investment that I mentioned earlier. Go look into them. This is the network trying to position itself in that space. So you can go look at the principal there, Louis Bateman, his track record, his history, where he comes from the ETF space in Canada, the Toronto Stock Exchange. And the idea with that investment is really to try to position EOS because the Spirit does have licenses to tokenize assets in 3 different markets, so Canada, Dubai, and Switzerland. So we're looking to expand on that, but the idea behind that is to be able to have EOS ETF, which we've had in the past. We had EOS ETP, but if there's no volume, if there's nothing behind it, it really doesn't work. It's not worth very much, and so that's that play there, is really that TradFi. They've got that network, that's their background. Bring that to EOS, as we see that that will be a play that we want to be part of in 2024 and 2025.
All right, so before my satellite potato dies on me here, we're going to wrap up this industry news segment. and throw it over to a fireside chat with Areg. So hope you guys enjoyed this light conversation. Time to get serious, time to focus your brain. We're going to get some good knowledge on instant finality prototype, and then a chat with the ENF Director of Engineering, Areg.
Yep,
So
take your alpha brain now.
There you go. Throw it over to the...
So we're building a prototype. This is a brand new algorithm. There's so many questions to be answered. We want to make sure we figure that all out before we spend time on really polishing it, making it production quality. Right now, we're in the process of kind of finalizing that prototype. And just today, we had a earlier iteration of that prototype that reached a point where we were able to launch this commit of Leap on a multi-node test network distributed across nodes in different places, right? Like all across the world, all across the globe. So we can have a realistic test of how long it takes to move things around.
Hello, everyone. So this is the demonstration of the testnet launch for Instant Finality. Currently, we have 21 block producers split on 3 different nodes. These are the nodes at the top here, like each of them essentially represents one machine that has 7 block producers. And then we have 3 P2P nodes that are the canary nodes for these block producer nodes. 1 pair in New York, 1 pair in Frankfurt, Germany, and another pair in Bangalore, India. So we have 1 pair on each continent. Here we go. So now we're producing. Everyone is receiving the blocks as expected.
Instant finality is a name we're giving to this new consensus algorithm. Antelope, an earlier EOSIO, have this consensus algorithm that determines, given a set of signers, which could be anyone, but the way we use it is the BPs. They're participating in according to the algorithm to provide signatures on blocks to determine what the last irreversible block is, which means the blockchain up to that point you can consider final, and it's not going to be reverted, right? You can, whatever side effects happen up to that point, they will remain the same and it won't change. Right now, with the existing algorithm, the time to finality is like 3 minutes, the true time to finality. And what instant finality does is it gives us that, faster, 1 or 2 seconds and you're good time expectation that people have, and actually gives the algorithm that guarantees that that's safe. We're now at the point where we've activated the protocol feature, we've deployed the new system contract so that we can call this set finalized transaction. Okay, now is the time to do the switch over.
And there we go. We are now running Instant Finality. And as you can see, Lib is trailing 2 to 3 blocks behind Head.
It's working, and we've transitioned to Instant Finality. Instant Finality is advancing, and the messages across this global network are moving fast enough to complete each stage of the process in less than half a second. But there's 3 stages, so that adds up to 1.5 seconds, basically. And we can see there's the LIB is 3 blocks behind the head block. The blocks have to be sent from one BP to the other, and as we've shown here, it's going through their canary node to the canary node of another BP, which could be in a different region, right, somewhere else in the world, to their BP. It has to go through those hops to receive the block, and then when it receives the block, it votes. The votes have to go back to the leader BP so that they can collect it to a QC and then propose a new block that it captures that QC and advances to the next stage of instant finality. So if that process happens fast enough, then the bottleneck here is really just how quickly we produce blocks to advance things. So if it takes less than half a second to do that round trip, then every block we get another stage, and we have 3 stages. So with 3 blocks, you get instant finality. In theory, though, network latencies or issues can delay that. So you might skip it on 1 block, and in that case, it could take longer than 3 blocks. It could take multiple blocks. But we're seeing here that even in a distributed network across the world, we're consistently getting at most 3 blocks, so 1.5 seconds finality. Tremendous work by the team. They've done such a great job. It's been a remarkable amount of work that was needed. It's just surprising how much work is needed. Yeah, we're finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel now.
Welcome to another EOS Fireside Chat. I'm your host, Brandon Lovejoy, and today we're chatting with Areg Hayrapetian. Areg is the Director of Engineering at the EOS Network Foundation, where he's at the helm of some truly groundbreaking developments. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about Leap 5 and some of the upcoming Leap 6 developments set to revolutionize blockchain with its new consensus mechanism. It's good to have you on the Fireside.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to talk about this.
What aspects of Leap 5, I guess, would you consider to be foundational changes that have been made in order to kind of set us up for Leap 6, and then take us into Leap 6, and we'll just walk right into instant finality and the good stuff with this new consensus mechanism?
Yeah, so in Leap 5, the changes we needed for instant finality was the BLS library and the BLS host functions. So the nice thing about BLS is that it has this property of an aggregate signature. Effectively, you can represent two or more, unlimited number actually, of parties participating in the signature with a single signature. But the aggregate signature property is really important for how we use it in instant finality. Right now, in our current algorithm, all of the signatures are captured individually in blocks over time. With BLS, we can combine these signatures from all the different VPs into one. And so that not only saves time, but it allows us to more quickly make progress on finality and reduce the time to finality. So that's what was included in Leap 5, the library for that we're going to use going into Leap 6 to support instant finality. And Leap 6 is really just about delivering instant finality. So we can get more into instant finality if you'd like.
What sort of features does this new level of finality enable?
With instant finality, their experience doesn't change that much, except that now if they're really cautious about whether it's reverted or not, they know it's truly final in the same time frame, 2-3 seconds, and they're done, right? But where it really makes more of a difference is in IBC. Because in IBC, you have to be paranoid about the irreversibility status, right? There's no way to back out. You have to only move in one direction. And so they have to wait, the contracts on either chain have to wait for irreversibility before they can act. And with 3-minute time to true finality with the current algorithm, that means every back and forth between two Antelope chains has an added latency of 3 minutes. Whereas now it's going to be like 1.5 seconds. So that really can speed that up in a very meaningful way.
Awesome. Very, very exciting to hear.
The 1.5 seconds is interesting though, because it should be able to go faster in theory. The reason it's not is because right now we're rate limited by the block rate. So because of the way we've designed this thing, where the proof to advance the stage is in the block, you might end up wasting like a quarter of a second just waiting for the time to send the block out. And then you got to do it again for the next block, for block 13. And then you got to do it again for the next block. So if you could decide to not wait half a second and just send the block out at variable block intervals, just send it out as soon as you want to, or as soon as it makes sense to do that, you could actually potentially compress this 1.5 seconds down to a sub-second. Even on a global network. It's not clear because we haven't measured yet to see what is the actual time it takes to collect all the last votes you need. We know it's less than half a second. Is it a lot less than half a second or just a little bit less? So I don't think it's going to gain us a lot, but that's one of the trade-offs we made as well, where we had huge simplifications by using this chained design where we include the QCs in the blocks so that every node out there, it has exactly the proofs they need to prove finality, right? But the trade-off with that is that you limit it to how quickly a block's produce. And so we knew the solution to this. So this is another feature from Hot Stuff, that a property we wanted to theoretically maintain, to go as fast as you can, as fast as it makes sense. But that's a bigger change that has consequences to things like block pay. And we got to figure out like, well, just because you could do it faster doesn't mean you should get paid more. And then there's backwards compatibility concerns. Does that affect contracts that are assuming each block goes by half a second? Concerns there. So we're not doing that for Leap 6, but that's another thing we could explore.
EOS with half-second block times always seemed so fast. The idea of making it faster than half-second block times. Yeah, it sounds just bonkers, but I like the idea of being able to adjust that. Areg, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for helping to demystify some of these very heady concepts. Really appreciate having you here on the Fireside Chat today. So let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was my pleasure.
All right. See you next time.
All right. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Areg, for that excellent, high quality EOS content. Love to hear it. All right. We're going to go into our EOS developer segment very soon. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys the Pomelo Bounties contest still ongoing until the end of the show. Get out there in the chat. Let us know what you would use a $100 gift certificate for what kind of Pomelo bounty you would create. And we'll draw a winner at the end of the show. Only a couple of entries so far, so get in there. All right, and then also stay tuned to hear what this month's developer challenge is. There's 1,000 EOS on the line, and we're gonna learn about that in just a second. So let's head on over to the EOS developer news intro.
Love that intro. Excellent music. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, afternoon, or night, wherever you are. If you're a dev, doesn't matter anyway. I'm Nathan James, and as always, we're just going to dig right into the tech. But before we do, make sure that you join the Antelope developers chat if you're a dev at t.me/Antelope devs. And if you're not a dev, what are you waiting for? Go on and open up our docs at docs.eosnetwork.com, shed that normie skin, and join us nerds at the cool table. All right. Enough marketing, let's get on with the show. Leap 5.0 has officially been released. We talked about this a little bit last time, but let's do a quick recap with the release notes. We have up to 5 times faster execution of system contracts like EOS.io, EOS.io.token, and EOS.io.evm, up to 4 times speed improvement and more reliable calls to APIs that rely on deserialization. And as an added benefit of these changes, Get Block will now always return fully deserialized blocks, whereas before there was an annoying issue where it returned semi-deserialized blocks due to timeouts. No longer an issue. Up to 20% reduction in system memory consumption by state database, though an upcoming article seems to suggest there might be more than expected, but we'll have to wait for the article, which I think is coming out by Rodrigo, or maybe Ross. I think it's from Ross. We'll wait and find out. High-skill read-only transactions with parallel processing up to 128 parallel threads. Gotta love threads. Support for larger transactions with relaxed constraints. More reliable block production by optimizing block start times to reduce latency between rounds. And customizable endpoints for more control over networking. A lot of this has already been running by BPs on the EOS mainnet, so we're probably seeing a lot of the benefits of this live. But the more nodes that come online with this, the more benefits we'll start seeing. For the EVM, actually, I guess the Big Beard Banter kind of stole my thunder here, but I'll talk about some of this again. We have EOS EVM node 0.7 that was released with my favorite feature, WebSocket support. You can now use WebSockets for your front-end applications with web3.js, Ethers, or any other WebSocket supporting provider. So you're free to tap into EVM events, which actually, for me, this was a big hassle as I had to find weird workarounds to try to get around this. So I'm really happy to see that this is now available. Support for the block parameter in ETH call, which is one of the RPC endpoints, is also now available. This opens up support for the graph, meaning that you can now have GraphQL support for EOS EVM, which is very cool. And there's also fixes related to nonces and HTTP connection limits. Bug fixes, we all love that they happen. Not particularly interesting, but love to see it. We have some new tokens added to the bridge, as they mentioned before, MLNK, Malinka, and Checks, the Shintai Exchange token. Moving along, we're going to tooling and community updates. There are some new RAM improvements, which is being spearheaded by EOS Nation's Denis. These include a few new actions to improve the usability of RAM and developer experience. We have transferring RAM, which is pretty much what it says on the box. You transfer RAM from one person to another. You also have the ability to burn RAM, which basically sends it to the EOSIO.null account, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have buy RAM self, which this one is a little bit interesting. Previous to this, or currently all we have is buy RAM, which buys from an account to an account. But the problem with this is that you could actually use it to siphon off somebody's EOS if you were to, let's say, whitelist this. So there's no safe way to set up a session key using Anchor or WharfKit, excuse me, or make this a whitelisted action that you could just run on a website without having to sign it again and again with your wallet, because you could siphon off somebody's EOS by transferring their RAM to you and then selling it off. But with this new buy RAM self, you don't really have that concern anymore, because you can only buy RAM for yourself, meaning that there's no incentive for a hacker to abuse this. It'll be great for some applications that we can build on top of this later that we'll actually get into in a second. And then there's return values for all of this stuff. So return values is a relatively new concept in Antelope and EOS, where actions that you call on the blockchain can return some kind of result. UN64, a struct of your own making. And these will now be accessible for all of the RAM actions. A historical problem that we've had, or I guess a nuisance, is that you had to go and get the account data after you did any of these RAM actions in order to repopulate the RAM data on a wallet or some kind of integrated website, because calculating all of the Banker algorithm yourself, not really viable, not something people want to do. So now this returns all of that data from the actions that you're calling, buy RAM bytes, sell RAM, or any of these new actions. And then finally, there's also a new set of logging actions, which allows developers to build composable contracts on top of buying and selling RAM by listening to those events, which opens up doors to quite a few new applications. We have new functionality for the Web IDE, which it now exports WASM compatible with the Vert JavaScript Antelope testing framework. It's a very cool framework. Allows you to write tests using code that you can share with your front ends, because of course your front ends is JavaScript mostly. Allows you to move time within tests, check time-based logic. This has always been a problem with C++ tests or Bash-centric tests, because you can't really move time on your local running Nodius instance. But here, since this is a virtual environment, you could just move to whatever time, backwards or forwards, and then run your tests that way. This works like Mocha and Chai, or Jest, if you're familiar with those JavaScript testing frameworks. And if you're not familiar with those JavaScript testing frameworks and you're a JavaScript developer, I really don't know what to tell you. You should be familiar with them. New framework called Fuck Yeah, for building smart contracts. You can write EOS contracts and compile them on any operating system. You don't even need to install anything if you already have Node.js on your machine. You can just use npx commands. You can write tests in JavaScript using Vert, write deployment scripts to push and set up contracts on any network, and also scaffold contracts, tests, and deployments using an extremely simple CLI. Also, it's called Fuck Yeah, so that should be all the reason you need to try it out. WharfKit also has some new updates. We have read-only transaction support added, which personally I'm a little bit angry about, because like 3 weeks ago, I had to create an application for read-only transactions and it wasn't supported, so I had to use EOS.js, and I was a little livid, and now it's added. So yeah, but support for return values is also added here. So the RAM actions, for instance, that we talked about before, you can now use these directly within Wharf, and you'll get it back nicely from just calling the actions from a transaction. Atomic Assets Library 1.0 has also been released, so you can go ahead and use those with the Atomic Assets. And then there was, of course, various bug fixes. Like I mentioned before, we love to see them, not particularly interesting, but it's good to see them there. Thalos was also released from EOS Sweden. This makes it easy to stream data from a ship node. It also allows filtering by the contract and action so that you can get the information you need. A little similar to the previous Demux, but much better architected. Has multiple channels you can tap into, like transactions, actions, rollbacks, and table deltas. Very cool to see some advancements in history, because we haven't really seen much of that recently. Then finally, last but very much not least, one of my favorites here is the drops contract by Greymass. This allows you to create drops, which are containers for seed data. Each drop costs a deterministic amount of RAM, so this is actually wrapping the whole concept of RAM only viable on EOS, which makes it cool, or I should say only viable on Antelope chains. You can transfer drops to others, which means that right now we already have the ability to transfer RAM, though it is through this drops mechanism, so it's not as clean as just having the transfer RAM actions that we talked about above or before. And then other applications can build functionality on top of the transferability and the data held within the drops, which is a little bit more important because this now serves as an on-chain RNG base. So you can have some kind of reveal commit scheme. And there is also contracts there for that, which allow you to build composable applications on top of this with on-chain RNG. There's more stuff that's not quite ready to talk about yet, like the article from Ross. So I'm going to save that for next time. But don't forget to stick around for the developer challenge with 1,000 EOS on the line. And let's head over to an interview with Brandon Lovejoy and the EOS stablecoin chain.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another Fireside Chat. Today I'm joined by Adams, who is marketing director with ESCC. Glad to have you, Adams. How you doing?
Hey, how you going? Good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Could you please introduce yourself and maybe provide a brief overview of the EOS stablecoin chain and kind of take us into it?
So my name is Adams. I've been in the Web3 space since 2018. Been pretty actively involved with a few projects. I have had the opportunity to work as a marketing lead for various public chains and exchanges. So I'm going to give a quick background about ESCC. It's a public blockchain built on the EOS platform, specifically designed to support stablecoin use cases. Our architecture is based on the EOS and EOS EVM, which provides a robust foundation for stability and scalability. We are very, very delighted to be part of the EOS Livestream today. It gives us the opportunity to introduce ESCC to the entire EOS community.
Glad to have you here on the Fireside Chat. And we haven't heard a lot from this project, so perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about what are some of the standout features of ESCC that differentiate it from other blockchain platforms, especially in terms of transaction efficiency on stablecoin applications.
Absolutely. So ESCC is the first stablecoin public chain on EOS. One of our biggest highlights is the use of stablecoin as gas fee. Now, to a lot of people, to a lot of the users, it brings more predictability to transactions. It mitigates the impact of crypto market ups and downs, volatility. Shortly, we plan to use USDT as the primary protocol gas token, but when we go online, we are planning to launch other stable coins. Yeah, and so that'll be used as our stable coin. So again, stay tuned, and you'll get more about that in the near future.
How do you think this might change the landscape of blockchain transactions?
So first of all, stability and predictability. So stablecoins are designed to maintain a stable value. They're usually pegged to a fiat currency like the US dollar. Using stablecoins as gas fees can provide stability and predictability to users. And this is highly, highly appreciated, especially in such a space like the Web3. It's still relatively new. And obviously, we are trying to encourage more and more people to join this space, as also retaining current users. So stability and predictability are key. Gas fees on Ethereum have been known to experience significant volatility, especially during periods of high network congestions. Stablecoin-based gas fees could potentially reduce that risk, making transaction costs more consistent and reliable. Users will have a more familiar and understandable unit of account when paying fees, rather than dealing with complex conversion calculations between native cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies. This simplicity can lower the entry barrier, again, for new users from outside of the Web3 space.
ESCC has recently been operational in a testnet environment. Can you share some insights into the performance and findings from the testnet phase?
So after a few months of very hard work on the development front, the ESCC network is in the testnet sort of phase. Our primary goal is to provide validators, developers, and traders with an invaluable opportunity to thoroughly test and provide constructive feedback. To acknowledge the valuable contributions of participants and to incentivize early adoption of ESCC network, we've allocated our tokens as rewards for the testnet. The testnet will comprise of 4 distinct acts, each presenting participants with a testnet mission or missions to complete and earn points, including tasks related to inscription development and utilization in general. Towards the conclusion of the testnet period, we will calculate scores for all participants, and then token rewards will be distributed proportionately based on the accumulated testnet points. As of now, we have reached an impressive milestone with nearly, I believe, 2 million blocks, 115,000 transactions, and over 2,000 connected wallets. Our initial plan was to conclude the testnet last week actually, but we've decided to extend its availability before transitioning to the mainnet. By doing so, we aim to provide users with an opportunity to continue testing and also providing feedback. So we're after a lot more feedback. We believe that there is always a room to improve, and we want to go with a more perfected product on the mainnet.
Looking forward, what are some of the key milestones that you're anticipating as the mainnet goes live, I guess?
We are currently prepared for the mainnet launch. However, we are closely monitoring the market trends to ensure optimal timing and also simultaneously launch our token on various exchanges. Additionally, we are very thrilled to share that we have received an immense interest from over 30 projects and wallets that are eager to launch on the ESCC platform. I'd also highly recommend staying tuned to our website and our accounts across Twitter, now known as X, and Discord and Telegram for latest updates. We also have some exciting news plans ahead. We will be launching a mainnet campaign to promote the ESCC platform and incentivize project launches. In addition to that, we are in the process of establishing the ESCC Foundation, which will try to really support and encourage projects development and attract more users to transfer their funds onto our blockchain. There are many exciting developments in the horizon. So again, everybody stay tuned.
30 projects is nice to hear, and foundation, very cool. Yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see this roll out. So hey, thanks for coming on the Fireside chat today and giving us a little more insight into what ESCC is up to. Have you back sometime?
Absolutely, a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us. Hopefully we'll talk soon.
It is time again for developer challenges. On the last episode, you had an opportunity to build a 2Don't app or a Tamagotchi dApp for 200 EOS each, one for EOS native and one for EOS EVM. We got a ton of submissions, but only the 2 that did it properly first actually won the prizes. Today, I have another set of challenges. A little bit of a higher prize pool this time. Number 1, History Node Guide. We have a new guide to set up a Node.EOS API, and we have guides for the various configuration options like peering and plugins. What we don't have is a guide for apps that need a history solution of their own. There are public history solutions available, but if you need your own, it's a hard journey right now. To solve that problem, I'm offering up 1,000 EOS to whoever creates the best history guide by the next episode. That's right, this isn't first come, first serve. Take your time and do your best work. Your guide will also live inside of the official EOS documentation with your name as the author and a link to your GitHub. Number 2, build a seeds app. A small group of us blockchain mad scientists have been toying around with this concept of seeds. It's an innovative way to load up arbitrary data onto the blockchain that can be used as a source for other types of applications, like games. One of the biggest problems we usually face is that the price of putting that kind of data on the blockchain is expensive, and then completely wasted when one of those games either gets abandoned or is just over. This system helps alleviate those core problems while also adding additional functionality like the transfer of ownership of those assets and API-like composability. The technology is still in beta and desperately needs some testing. So to kickstart the ecosystem, I'm offering up 200 EOS to 3 developers who are willing to create projects on top of seeds and provide quality feedback. Follow the first link on the screen to join the Seeds Telegram chat, and the second link on the screen to join the Antelope developers chat if you want to reach out about the history guide. Until next time, happy building.
Oh, we're back.
Good thing good thing I was here in front of the camera.
I see a bullet point. Steph, hype up, crowd, and to recap what just happened. So Steph's still lagging in the background. He'll be back for the outro. But we're just going to kind of pick up where we left off. But I do kind of want to tie it into some of the things that we saw. So Areg, our director of engineering, and Guillaume from the UX team dropping the alpha on the testnet prototype for instant finality. What is the latest? Are we able to share any updated, very fresh timelines on this?
Oh, you're actually leading me into this. Okay, I thought so. We are starting the big bid banter. I thought you're actually just doing Steph's portion right now.
No, I don't. I didn't practice.
Okay.
Our thing. There's a bounty contest. I'll plug Pamela Bounty. Put your questions in the live chat. We'll still be doing the drawing at the end for the free $100 Pamela Bounty. So drop your ideas for Pamela Bounties in the live chat. There you go.
Awesome. There you go. All right, so now we are moving into, I guess, big beer banter section number 2, and you've already lined it up with a very pointed question about instant finality. And so yes, we can drop some tentative dates. So I guess let's just talk about the process. Maybe back up a little bit. So we are going to be dropping some dates or general timelines. This is going to be formalized within the next couple of weeks, where we already have this plan laid out. Everything is ready. It's just a question of now deploying it. We typically at DNF, we're running on a biannual schedule. Spring, we release an update, and that update generally would be a non-contentious update or non-hard fork, so to speak, so anybody can update at any given time. This would be what we just released with 5.0. Now, I just said spring, 5.0 just came out in final early January, right? So clearly we didn't hit the mark there. And that's because for those who were following, we were going to release instant finality in Q4 of last year. So we're aiming actually first week of December was the general idea. That did not pan out, and so that changed our whole release schedule. And we've essentially fast track what the other release schedule was going to be. So what 5.0 is going to have instant finality did not have instant finality. We then added things that were going to be ready later on. So we finalized 5.0, and now 6.0, which we typically would come out in Q3, Q4 of this year, because typically we'd aim around end of September. We are trying to fast track. And so obviously with timing of the market, we're looking at what's going on. We see that the tides could turn very rapidly, and we want to output instant finality and everything that enables earlier rather than later. And so instead of trying to aim for that end of September, we've devised a roadmap, and we're going to try to hit end of July. Now, end of July is very aggressive. We don't know if we'll be able to hit that. If we can't hit end of July, and this will all be clear in the documentation that Zack is going to be releasing in the next couple of weeks. If we can't hit end of July, then the fallback will be end of August, so about a month later. And if we can't hit that, then we're back to our normal end of September. I do believe that the confidence level for end of September is incredibly high. We're good that's happening. The confidence level for end of August is pretty good, but it is aggressive. End of July, extremely aggressive, but we do believe it is possible. And so more details to come on that, but we are aiming to have basically Leap 6.0 not released live on Mainnet by the end of July is the idea. And so it would be walking back from there, it would be released roughly in final version, or I guess the first version, so RC1, early April, and then we go through the motion. So you got your RC1, potentially RC2, RC3, depending. That's usually normal. We usually get a few RCs. Then it's final. Then all throughout this whole period of time, it's released on Jungle. We've got a big plan for that as well. We're going to have a Jungle 4, potentially even a Jungle 5, very specific for this. We've got an incentive program there for that is going to be deployed so that people are incentivized, nodes are incentivized to actually deploy it, find bugs, and be able to report back on those within a very short time frame. So incentivizing that, because again, the idea is if we want to meet that end of July time frame, we need to compress everything else. So we need a lot of participation, a lot of feedback, a lot of testing. So we need to compress that, and so we've designed a whole plan around that, and you will make that public. Can you share maybe with the audience roughly when?
Yeah, so right as everyone's getting back from the Chinese New Year, we'll be sending out our initial comms. Think of it, if the hard fork was a wedding, we'll be sending out the save the dates to all of the exchanges, node operators, block producers.
With the exact dates, right? So right now I'm just giving you an end of July, but there's an exact date, and there's 3 weeks before
probably
that.
Probably the last day of July, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a hint, is like we usually try to not release on a Friday. We try to release on a Wednesday. End of July happens to be on a Wednesday. Gives you a hint.
So there was some confusion. So we dropped a teaser for the testnet prototype of Instant
Correct.
Finality, and people were like, "Oh, Instant Finality is done. Let's deploy it tomorrow."
Still a lot of work to do. This is a demo. A lot of work to do there. I mean, yes, it would be great that this is already ready, but it is not. But we are working as quickly as we can to be able to release that. And a huge kudos to the engineers. I know I joke around a lot, and if you're following me sometimes, I'm like, yeah, just push the button. It's kind of to highlight the sarcasm there, the irony there. On the back of this, there's an actual product, like there's actual code. There are people working on this. It's not that simple. And obviously we're talking about consensus algorithms. We're talking about dependence. In this case, it's a major upgrade. This is a massive, massive upgrade. We're talking about dependencies. We're talking about risk. There's financial valuation that's there as well. So releasing something out in the wild and just like, oh, we'll just kind of wing it is not an option. And this fundamentally changes EOS so much, to the equivalent of what Ethereum did with Ethereum 2.0, right? So it took 4 years. We're trying to compress that down to a year and a half. This is a massive, massive, massive upgrade. And so it's very important to get it right and to get it to a point where we are comfortable with it, so that we're not putting anybody's assets at risk. And so this is why, it's taken longer than what we expected. And for clarity, it's really on the integration front. So Instant Finality and the way that Yum made it was ready a while back. Once we started integrating it into EOS is when we started merging it. We started seeing issues. We started seeing potential edge cases, went back to the redesign, looked at certain areas, and just, this is really difficult stuff. This is really, really hard. This is, very few people do this. There's no magic guidebook telling you what to do. You're literally creating it. There's nobody else before you that's done it.
And what you saw in the prototype was basically a simulated hard fork. So it was running, I'm assuming, Leap 5.0, and then it switched to Instant Finality.
Correct. Yes, that's what you saw, right? Because it's more than just the deployment. It's running and it switches over. That's extremely complex.
It would be much easier to launch a brand new chain with Instant Finality than to change a jet midair, changing its engine. I forget what the analogy was, but it's like changing the wheels of a car while it's driving. It's very difficult to do. In the social post that we posted, the teaser, it said it's not just a huge milestone for EOS, but for the entire blockchain industry. And I wasn't just talking about Antelope chains, like the cryptography behind this. There will be, we mentioned it on the last live stream, there will be an academic paper that goes with this. It won't be just about EOS. It's about this algorithm in the background. It validates the cryptography, and it will be innovative for security experts, cryptographers, blockchain experts, but it's not something that just any blockchain can kind of take, at least existing blockchains. It's one of those things where if maybe you're planning to launch a blockchain, you're going to kind of be playing from behind. Maybe it could be useful for them, but and I'm not technical enough to really explain the whys of this, but as far as I understand, the work that's behind this has a much wider ranging impact than for just the EOS blockchain. But as far as like what we're going to do, EOS will be the first Antelope chain that hard forks into this, obviously, and everyone else is going to be watching how we do it. But I don't think this has ever been done before. So there's been major upgrades like the merge on Ethereum, but I don't think any chain has ever changed its finality after launch.
Boss did. Boss did years ago, right? Boss, the EOS chain Boss did. Did it change
after it launched? Or I think it launched with it, didn't it?
Did it launch? Is it? I forget if we launched it with that or if we transitioned over. I think we transitioned over, but very different times. A lot of overhead, very different. But yes, it is. This is quite massive. And actually, so you talk about kind of how this is, great for the industry as a whole. But let's focus on, obviously, we're in EOS. Why is this good for EOS? So what does this bring about? Areg in the call, or I guess in the interview, mentioned how this is key for IBC. This really will bring IBC to life. So we've had IBC, the function itself, somewhat limited in who's been using it, but some people have been using it, some games have been using it, some applications have been using it, but you're still stuck with this 3 minute on each side essentially. And so it's usable, it's functional. But there's a difference between being functional, it being capable of doing something, and then it being actually capable of doing it, where you could actually leverage it. And with instant finality, this brings it down to a level where now it's actually possible, where now you could, let me backtrack a little bit. When the ENF was formed, there's a few files that were put on our plate of like, these are the things that we want you to try and hit. And some of them just came from the original white paper. If you recall in the original white paper, one of the claims was EOS was going to have 1 million transactions per second. Like, it was a big thing, right? And yes, EOS does provide tremendous amount of throughput, and there's nobody else that's been able to get that amount if we look at what EOS has been able to perform, but we're still not at the 1 million TPS mark. And that's kind of a loaded thing because obviously TPS is no longer as valid of a metric. So, if you're on the EVM, it's more swaps per second, etc. But still, it's a general idea to work towards. And finally, with IBC and now with instant finality, that idea of 1 million TPS or unlimited scalability, because really that's what that represents, comes to life. It becomes possible. Still a bunch of work to do afterwards in order to take those functions and make products out of them, or to enable further functions. And of course, we're going to hit some walls there as well in terms of, okay, now we can connect chains. Now they can speak to one another within a very reasonable time. So if it's 1.5 seconds on one side, 1.5 the other time, it means within 3 seconds, give or take, maybe 3 to 5 seconds, you're actually able to transfer over completely done. That is effectively instant. Well, now you can have a third one and a fourth one and a fifth one. But then you can start to imagine, okay, well, we've got bottlenecks on resources. What about RAM? Could you start leveraging the RAM here for account creation, right? We're stuck on a certain amount of accounts here. You could start leveraging these other instances, which are not in a parent-child relationship, but in a very much sideways equal relationship. Those become reality. Now, obviously, then you need to start building products off of this, and there's going to be some issues there and how you get there, but that becomes real. And so this is quite massive. And then one of the big things that it enables, and I guess this is a segue into, is BTCL2. We've been talking about this now. We've dropped this for a while. Let's talk about BTCL2.
Well, let me tighten it up a little bit. So it was,
all right, let's tighten it up.
It was timely that ESCC did the little interview segment, because EOS is once it launches on mainnet, EOS will be the first chain running multiple instances of virtual machines. So it'll be running EOS EVM, our main virtual machine of Ethereum, and then the EOS stablecoin chain. So that's two virtual machines. And now we're going to get into a Bitcoin virtual machine running on top of the EOS network. So, and it could be multiple instances of that. There might be more EVMs. EOS at the base layer is essentially the operating system layer of all these virtual machines sitting on top of it. None of those virtual machines will ever, or environments, let's say, will ever need to worry about like EOS hitting capacity limits. Like right now, there's enough block space on EOS to really manage it on a single chain. But let's talk about a hypothetical future where we're starting to hit those capacity limits. At that time, EOS with the instant finality could potentially scale horizontally, as you mentioned, with the side chains, and the virtual machines on top won't have to worry about it. As far as if you're an app developer or an end user on EOS EVM or the Bitcoin L2 or the EOS stablecoin chain, you won't really realize that there's 2, 3, 4, however many chains need to be running in parallel to do different things, whether it's different an accounts chain or like, I can't even really imagine it at this point because we don't need it yet. But it's really unique to EOS, and the instant finality makes it so you don't even really know that you're jumping between chains, because a lot of other layer ones, like if you just look at their block time alone is a lot of times longer. Like Polygon's 2 seconds. Within those 2 seconds, you could actually have transactions going between blockchains in the same time as a single block on Polygon. So yeah, Bitcoin layer 2. So not a lot of material has been published on this. So if you're in the EOS Elites chat, so let's plug that again.
No, I'm plugging it again.
If you hold 10,000 or more EOS, that means you have skin in the game. Current price is, what was it, $7,000 of EOS. So if you could prove that you have 10,000 EOS to prove that you have skin in the game, you basically just need to confirm it with Fank Wu or anyone from EOS Labs. EOS Labs is the ones who set this group up. That's probably the place where this BTCL2 has been discussed the most. The only other place it's really been discussed publicly was in the block producer call notes from the last, there it is, up on the screen from the BP call.
And I just see a typo, Guillaume Tremblay. I don't know how that's spelled, but there's a typo there. So Guillaume's name, make note.
So there hasn't been an official announcement yet because there's still a lot of pieces coming together of who does what. Like, what is the BTCL2? It sounds great in theory, but what does it actually mean? So why don't you kind of debrief the EOS community on like current status, what to expect, what's the next steps? Just kind of, there's a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot still undecided and a lot that has been decided.
Let's be very clear. The majority has not been decided. The majority is still, and when I say majority, I mean like 99.9%. It is that high. It is still very much at the ideation phase. There is somewhat of a recognition wider in the space, outside of EOS as well, that with the ETF approval of Bitcoin, that at some point, especially because we're lining up with the Bitcoin halving coming, typically those come as well with a bull run. We have not had a bull run in a while. Like, there's a bunch of different things coming into play here that many people believe that there's going to be influx of new people coming into the blockchain space. And typically when people come into the blockchain space, the first point of contact they come through is Bitcoin. And so we've seen a lot of different chains position themselves for what they believe is going to be an influx of new people that you would want to serve. And you'd want, those people will come in, what will they want to do? We still don't know yet. Majority of them will likely just want to have Bitcoin because Bitcoin go up, right? That's fine. There's an acceptance of that. There's also some people that'll want to do stuff with their Bitcoin, or there's stuff that there's people right now that currently have Bitcoin that the value of Bitcoin rises if many people come in. And so now they'll want to take some of those gains and deploy them into other projects. They want to, make that Bitcoin go to work, or like, hey, I've made something. And we see that you've got these regular cycles of it goes from Bitcoin to Ethereum to then altcoins and such. And if you have an offering there, if you offer something, you're opening a door for people to come and leverage your product for X reason, for whatever reason. And so what this general idea of let's try to position EOS to have an offering, whatever that offering means, still very much undetermined, very much undecided. Tons of different ideas being thrown around, bunch of people doing research on the technical side of what's out there, what are the different approaches. Is this more of a roll up? Is this just going to be more like native? Is this trustless? Is this through a bridge? Like, there's tons of different approaches out there. There's multiple different solutions and options out there. So there's basically a team of people that have been gathered this was just asked basically out in those channels. Like, is there anybody that has particular skill set, particular interest? let's just discuss this topic. And a lot of people got interested in this. And so this idea is now being run in real time. Nothing's been decided. There's going to be a white paper. So we already started forming the bones of that white paper. I believe I'll guess through my Twitter account, I'll publicly announce that I'm working on that white paper of this idea of BTCL2. Undefined idea of what does it even mean, which approach is it going to take, etc. The general guidelines right now are that we're working towards having an offering in April, May, give or take, having a white paper accompanied by that. Still undetermined of whether or not it's going to be its own chain. Is it running on EOS? Is it more like the EVM solution? So it's a smart contract on EOS. It's more like a Bitcoin virtual machine. Is it maybe just taking a third party that already exists and connecting to that in the interim? What is the long term for this, etc.? So all of this is still in flux, but the general idea is a bunch of people got together, believe in this potential future that there's going to be people coming in and that we want to have an offering position EOS for that, and are trying to figure this out. Myself included. And so, you'll see more of that over the coming weeks and months. If you want to see kind of how the sausage is made, as you mentioned, Zack, EOS Elites, a lot of these ideas are stemming from that group. Talking about RAMs, a lot of the RAM and RAMs discussion and inscriptions all occurred within that group, because a big part of this group is that you've got people verifiably have capital. And so when there's a new idea that's being brought up, or there's a new project that's being launched or something, you're seeing in masses these people coordinate and actually participate in this. And so you saw that with RAMs, you saw that with the different inscriptions, whether it be Echo or the ESCC, the first one, and others that came after that. It's people that have tokens and they're incentivized to see the network grow and to try to test things out. And we're back in a phase right now, which is really exciting, of a lot of experimentation. So we talked about RAMs earlier. Nathan talked about RAM Valley, talked about drops. We talked about Denis. Huge shout out to Denis, who kind of started this by proposing the change of variable for RAM output. So we had been for years outputting 1 kilobit per block. Wow, that was fast. And I'm just looking at on screen, they're actually putting that there. It just went from proposing this to the block producers in a BP call, and then afterwards actually releasing code, people testing it going out as an MSIG, people approving it, and it changed the underlying tokenomics on EOS within that second, as soon as that MSIG was signed. And we saw what that did. It created a new market. It basically changed the economic rules of the game, where all the rules of the game are public. Everybody's got access to the same thing. But now it changes how the network reacts to that, how the network is optimized towards that. So we've seen a lot of things come out with RAM. RAM has been kind of a heavy topic. And kind of this approach that Labs has been taking of, do a little jab and see what sticks, or like throw spaghetti on the wall and throw a lot of spaghetti here and there and see what sticks. This is an approach that they've been taking, little steps at a time, but a lot of them. RAMs and all RAM is part of that. This BTCL2 is a different approach with this in mind as well. A little bit bigger in scope, actually a lot bigger in scope, and a little bit more planning, and definitely more resources involved. But generally same idea, like trying to position EOS prior to something happening, before you believe, or before this thing that you believe is going to happen. Try to position yourself so you have an offering at that time.
And there's so in the elites chat, there's been discussion. So you mentioned RAMs, and I just want to differentiate. RAMs is an inscription token, so I think it's RAMs EOS.io is how you mine this RAM. So it's backed by EOS Labs, and there's been discussion. Nothing's final, like Yves said. There's so much still to be determined. But Wachong, the head of EOS Labs, he would like to make RAMs potentially a governance token for the BTCL2. And like I said, with a caveat, nothing's concrete at this point, but it is an idea. And looking at the EOS EVM as an example, it's using 2.34 gigs of RAM, and it's just kind of getting started. So I envision the BTCL2 solution. It's another virtual machine running on EOS. Probably will be a RAM hog again. But with the RAM's inscription, it's a way to incentivize current token holders, the current EOS community, to participate in this. Whenever you mint RAMs, inscriptions, you're essentially just locking up RAM that you hold in your account. And there's no white paper behind it. It's really up in the air of what this token even is. It's really, I think I saw Trimbot say it, it's really just a show of support for what Labs is doing with intent and hope of them doing something with it. And it's something that constantly comes up in discussion in the Elites chat. So while on the topic of governance, so we're talking about Leap 6 and the hard fork, and people, it's come up of like, okay, once you decouple the block producers, like when new governance, like there's a lot of new potential there. One of the things that's come up is maybe, and once again, nothing's been decided, this is discussion, maybe RAM could have some kind of governance value after Leap 6. So this isn't even talking the RAM's inscription, just purely RAM. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you see as the potential of RAM playing a part in governance? Because right now, the liquidities on the protocol and liquidity, I think it's, I don't have the number in front of me, 12 to 14 million or so EOS locked in that pool. So there's some people
very low, which is like 1%. Yeah.
So people are talking about voting with RAM now for BPs, but that's not necessary. There's a lot that would have to go into that to do it now. So I think it's better to think forward of, okay, after the Leap 6 upgrade, let's start thinking about like, how does the network evolve from there? Like, do you see
the definition of a BP changes with 6.0, right? So the functionality behind the BPs will change. When we talked about this a few months back, the idea that there was going to be 3 separate roles: block finalizer, block proposer, and consensus leader. Yeah, that has changed where now there's only 2 functions. And so I believe it's block proposer and consensus leader have merged into one. There's going to be 2. Basically, now there's going to be block proposer and block finalizer. Now, at what level are these technical roles, right? So in theory, I support the idea of having RAM in there somehow, of being able to determine who gets to do what. But then in practice, you need to look at, okay, well, just because you hold a certain amount of tokens does not make you suddenly magically now technically capable of doing something. So we're still going to need to figure out, well, what is that role? What would it do? How do you determine those people? It's not as simple as that. Is it a 1-for-1? Is it, right, currently we have a 30-for-1? How do you go about that? So those options become available. So there's just discussion about this right now, and there's nothing private. It's all public in those groups. It's just basically people throwing out ideas and seeing what sticks. And this general idea of being able to integrate RAM within some kind of governance function within the network is very interesting, because it's inarguable. You can showcase that you own the asset. It is that skin in the game. It is of finite value, and so it's quite different than EOS itself. Use finite value loosely because theoretically, we were increasing the output of RAM up until very, very recently. So it is possible to re-increase, but there's a limit at some point.
There's hardware limits.
This is actual RAM. This is a physical piece of hardware. And so at some point, you cannot have more than that. Actually, even with the 400 gigs right now, for the majority of hardware that's being run, the people are not having 400 gigs of RAM in their machines because there's no need for it. The amount of available RAM for purchase was always greater than the RAM purchased, which is always greater than the RAM used. So we're not even at 64 gigs of RAM used. So there's a lot of things at play here. It's not as simple. That brings up
another point. If we're even talking RAM for governance, like there's kind of different types of RAM. There's RAM that has been written to, which means it's using some kind of storage in that RAM. And then there's just holding RAM that is unused, and it's different because if every byte of RAM, every kilobyte of RAM that was owned was written to, it would put more stress on the block producer hardware than as it currently is. I don't know I don't know if we even know I don't know the percentage right now off the top of my head of out of all of the RAM that's been purchased, how much of it has been written to.
So we're at just under 64 gigs. I think we're in the 50 gigs of RAM used, RAM's written. But we're at over 200 gigs of RAM sold. I believe we could go check quickly. 190 available for purchase. I just want to correct something that's in chat. Content says most high performance CPUs have a maximum of 128 gigs of RAM. So that was the case for a lot of people that are currently running i9s. A lot of these people running i9s are running on a little bit older i9s, so maybe 10900K, 11900K. Some people maybe 1200K. I doubt very many people are running 1400Ks right now. If that doesn't even mean anything to you, don't worry about it. The idea is those platforms typically have a maximum within their chipsets allowable of 128 gigs of RAM. Those at the time, those CPUs were chosen because they're very easy access. They're desktop CPUs, gaming CPUs. You could buy them on Amazon, very easy to get. You could buy a lot of them, and then you could separate each machine for a specific function. And those CPUs at the time anyways were around the 4 gigahertz single core mark. Now with boosting, you could go up to 5 gigahertz, but anyways, for BP purposes, very unlikely. Why I bring this up right now is a lot of the offerings, let's say on cloud, even AWS now, offers machines that go beyond 4 gigahertz, so 4.5 gigahertz, but then are running on Xeons. And so we do have some block producers actually running on Xeons and now have 1.5 terabyte allocation of RAM available. And so it really depends what you're running. It's not as simple as you have to run desktop grade machine anymore. Actually, we're seeing a shift where it's maybe even more valuable, although more costly, to run Xeon type more enterprise run machines because the performance gains of the extra core clocks on your single core are really not that big at this stage. If we add into account the cooling and such, if I'm talking about 1400, 900Ks, that type of thing. And so the possibilities have in terms of what you're able to run in terms of hardware, as well as then that big thing when people were running AWS nodes. Historically, they're running Z9D instances. Those were topping out, I think, at 3.8 or 3.6 gigahertz. Now you've got way more offerings that are comparable to the fastest core clock single core. So anyways, it's not as simple as that, but we are in a state where the potential for people switching over to more RAM is way more attainable than it was just a few years back.
So I think we kind of talked about it in the first segment a little bit of this excitement around RAM. Like you're seeing a lot of innovation happen that we hadn't really seen in years. And Nathan covered a nice chunk of it by talking about the drops from Greymass, the game Nathan's making, and then the upgrade, the system contract upgrade. So yeah. You also mentioned earlier our cadence of doing the leap upgrades. We usually do them twice per year, but there will be an exception made targeting late February-ish.
Well, those cadences really refer to more so Node EOS upgrades. Now, obviously, it makes sense to pair CDT or system contracts upgrades at the same time. There's obviously a lot of coordination happening to this, but that wasn't necessarily the rule or the policy that we had in place. System contract upgrades are much easier. There's way less dependencies. It's smaller potatoes, so to speak. And so Denis Carrière, again, big shout out to Denis. Through discussions, we started talking about what could we transfer RAM? Could we add functionality on that front and stuff? Made some proposals. We've got some code, been reviewing the code, and we are aiming to, if barring any security issues, vulnerabilities, all that jazz, pending that everything tests out and everything is good, we are looking at deploying new system contracts before the end of February, which would allow those new functionalities to RAM. Again, because we've seen that timing to market is very important. There's a lot of traction on RAM right now. If we can add more functionality to it, there are people out there looking for that. There are developers out there, focusing on this right now. The more we can do to help support that, the more we want to do, of course.
And the transfer RAM so I don't understand all of the different upgrades being made, but I do see the conversations happening of the people building, and they're very valuable, and all the feedback's awesome too, like seeing Aaron from Greymass like pitching ideas, Bart taking them in. But with the transfer RAM action, what it allows is, so previously there was a way to transfer RAM. If I'm holding RAM, I would have had to have sold it back to the bank
around, which is not a transfer.
Sold it back to Bancor algorithm.
You lose 1%.
And then bought it from another account. But that doesn't work if the RAM has already been written to. If it has already been written to, then it's kind of stuck to your account, which makes it really hard for a developer refactoring contracts. If you want to kind of spread it out across multiple accounts, there was no way to do it. But what the transfer RAM action also allows developers or organizations within the network to lock in the current RAM price, stockpile it, and then maybe potentially distribute it as almost quasi grants for like account creation or things like that.
Yeah.
So you made an announcement last week. 1 million EOS RAM purchase was made. Mm-hmm. So like, what led to that decision? Because you'd mentioned that the ENF would buy some RAM, but you didn't give anyone a heads up on it. It just happened one day.
No, because I wasn't going to give a heads up on it. I couldn't give a heads up on it. You didn't even know about it. And obviously everybody wants to know because there's the economic value. Hey, please tell me before you pump RAM so I can go and buy it and then sell it right afterwards. So that was not happening. So yes, I did announce basically instantly after I made that purchase with ENF account. So with min.grants, I did purchase 8.89 gigs of RAM. So at a cost of 1 million EOS minus the 5,000 EOS fee going into Rex. You're welcome for those who were staked in Rex, giving that little extra juicy APY. We did purchase 8.89 gigs of RAM. And as you just mentioned, the RAM can be now used for its utility. So it's obvious the ENF cannot really sell RAM. We wouldn't be able to then, in the future, something like, hey, look, we're going to lock in some of our RAM games. That are quite limited there. That is not the purpose. Obviously, everything is quite transparent. That would have, there's a lot of things to consider there if ever ENF wants to sell RAM. So rest assured, the likelihood of that happening is almost nil. Theoretically possible, probably not going to happen though. But what we can do with that RAM is incentivize it. So use the RAM for its utility. And that's what you're getting at, right? Yeah. So if we want to offer, for example, free accounts, if we want to offer subsidies for developers, so we're getting into, we're partnering with applications, they have a RAM cost, we have RAM, we could potentially help them deploy their smart contracts or give them RAM and do promotions with the RAM for the utility of the RAM itself. We could not do so if RAM was not transferable, because now I'm owning the asset, but I can't give you the asset unless I resell it in the market and then you buy it immediately afterwards. It's not very effective. There's a cost. And as you mentioned, if it's written to, I'm not even sure that's possible. But now we'd be able to leverage the RAM for its utility, do some partnerships, do some promotions with that RAM for very, very key functions. We're now holding almost 9 gigs of RAM. That's an insane amount of RAM for actual functionality, for actual, the development and its use case. That's quite a lot. So I didn't run the numbers, and maybe you're quicker than me. How many accounts could we create with that? Let's assume that there are 8 kilobit accounts. We're creating a lot of accounts. Like, this is not a problem, basically. So this idea of at some point accounts will become too expensive, that if there's a really successful app, they won't be able to reach success because now they can't afford accounts. That the ENF has, if it really wants, plenty of accounts that it'll be able to give out. So then it becomes more of a question of how do we ensure that we give accounts and that people can benefit from those accounts, that they're not being wasted, that they're not being farmed, that there's no abuse, etc. So, but that now becomes available with the fact that we have RAM and the fact that now we'll be able to transfer over that RAM in the future.
I've seen other comments in the community of, because since the RAM inflation stopped, kind of speculation took over, it became more of a hard asset. People are comparing it to real estate on the EOS network. And I've seen discussion of, what if RAM becomes like too expensive for a developer? And what I'm seeing with the upgrades coming to the system contracts at the end of the month, or the end of February, hopefully, is it's really foundational. Like, it's not necessary now, but I have seen like the beginning discussions, like with our engineers, of it would be possible to do RAM rental, for example, of a rental marketplace for RAM. So it's not like it's impossible.
Oh,
it's
we're
just
talking about this for sure. Yeah. So because it's a finite resource, and it is running on the Banter algorithm, right? So there's going to be a point where people will just not buy RAM any further. It will just be way too expensive for people to buy RAM. It'll be possible, but it will become quite expensive. Now, if you can justify that expense, of course you'll do so. But for those who hold RAM, they might want to hold it as an asset. They might want to hold like this piece of land that you own, but you're willing to rent it. So yes, that could be something. Or it could be that if you hold RAM and you've got users, Or if people hold RAM and they're your users, maybe you do airdrops to them, or maybe they rent you the RAM. So you've got like your community actually rents you the RAM so that you can deploy your project. You give them back dividends based on what you make, because you're now able to run a business on the underlying asset that they own. Like there's a lot of possibilities that can eventually come out of this. But yes, you mentioned something really interesting. This idea that RAM is arguably a real world asset. It is literally a real world asset. It is a representation of physical hardware, but it's also at the same time kind of this new thing that people are talking about, DePIN, decentralized physical infrastructure. Not in the same sense that DePIN is, but also not in the same sense that RWA is, because RWA typically is not as tangible as this actual thing. So it's kind of a hybrid in between of it's RWA, it's DePIN, but it's not. And it is an incredibly interesting asset because it underpins the network. And because it is finite and because you need it to run, we've seen a huge interest in obviously people purchasing it and people speculating on it. Those economics that I talked about in earlier have been changed. And so we're seeing the market react to that. And it's quite exciting as we go back to a phase where people are experimenting again. We have not been in this environment or this mood or this feeling for a very long time, and it all really started with just one simple proposal of a variable change. Very, very simple.
I mean, just some like EOS inflates, it's at a very low rate, 3%. RAM does not. So if nothing else happened, you would think that at bare minimum RAM would have a 3% appreciation, but we've seen a lot more than that recently. But we're also seeing like innovation on it. So the RAM pool, the protocol owned liquidity is like, let me just check what the current number is. I think in the article we said it was 4 times deeper. Yeah, so there's almost 14 million EOS in the RAM pool, and that's protocol owned liquidity. It's not going to get rugged. No one can pull the liquidity out of it because the protocol owns that liquidity. And that is
it's essentially 100% liquid. That's the idea, right? The price will change as you take out the liquidity, but it's always 100% liquid is the idea.
So you see like tokenized RAM. So you see like BRAM on Defibox. You could actually collateralize your BRAM to borrow EOS against it to like use EOS for its utility. You could buy power ups, you could buy altcoins with it, or you could, I've seen people leveraging up and buying more RAM. You could also short RAM. Like if you're a developer and you wanted to hedge and say, I need a bunch of RAM, but I want to kind of protect my downside, you could borrow BRAM and sell it to the market as a short hedge. So we're seeing all of these products and innovation happening. And I think that's really cool to see. We saw RAM, it's already listed on one centralized exchange. So Big One listed BRAM. I know that there's work in the background going on to get it listed on more exchanges. And then also with the system contract upgrades, it gives RAM itself more token-like properties, but not, I don't know if it'll be token-like enough to be listed on exchanges itself. But that's kind of what the purpose of BRAM is. And BRAM is also available on the EVM, which is nice because then it's more accessible. You can kind of skip the EOS native accounts and access it from the EVM side. Anything else on RAM? I'm trying to go through my notes.
I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of the RAM.
The impact. So there are impacts to the higher RAM. So one of the bigger ones that we've seen, and it ties into the EOS EVM, is so there was some Inscription events, and when you mint NFTs on EOS EVM, it's different than when you mint NFTs on most other Ethereum-based chains, and that's because most other Ethereum-based chains, they're just using disk storage, so it's super cheap, it's pretty much unlimited, and that's how it is. Whereas on EOS, if you're minting an NFT on EOS EVM, you're minting it in RAM, so it's taking up some amount of RAM. I don't know how many bytes they're taking up, but we had an Inscription event, the Echo Inscription. It used an incredible amount of RAM, so then EOS Labs just had to top up the EOS EVM account. And as another result was the gas fee on the EOS EVM had to be increased. So it had to be increased because there's an underlying cost to running the EVM. When you pay EOS as gas, underneath that gas fee, the EVM takes care of it all, but it needs to buy RAM for storage. It needs to buy power ups to push the transactions on the chain. And with these NFTs being minted, it turned out that the original gas fees that were set were actually lower than the cost to actually mint these NFTs on RAM. So as a result,
it's because the current gas structure, which is also in talks of changing, is a one size fits all.
Yes.
And so previous to that particular inscription you mentioned, which is actually writing NFTs to it, so it's higher consumption, the gas cost was determined on theoretical numbers. Obviously, before the network launch, you don't have any data, so you're looking at other networks. You're guesstimating how many transactions they're doing, how much you could do at your peak. You set some rates there, and then as we saw the first inscription come about, like, oh, okay, we can handle way more. Like this is amazing. And I think when the first one came out, the majority of those still hadn't even upgraded to 5.0, and then once we did, it'd be even higher. But anyways, kind of digressed there. We didn't have the data to be able to determine the proper gas fee, and we've got a one size fits all. So what we've learned from this as well is now we have way more data. So we're able to look at in times of congestion when the network is running way higher than what it, from zero state, what would be the appropriate gas cost. So we made that first adjustment, went from 150 Gwei to 300 Gwei. And that would likely be good for the majority of the transactions when the network is running at congestion. We're still talking about sub pennies here. Okay, so you as an end user, you don't see any difference. It's really negligible. And then for that one particular inscription, we then went up to 900 Gwei. So 6x from original, 3x from the new kind of floor. Still sub penny, kind of a joke. You don't really notice anything on your end, but it highlights another issue but a swap is not an inscription with an NFT. And so why would you set the rate at, let's say in this example, 900 Gwei, if that can accommodate this type of transaction, but that's only valid for this kind of transaction. If this type of transaction is to be done, now you're overpaying, like the system is overcharging you. And so this idea of, and others have done this, and so we do believe that it is possible, from what I understand. We're not there yet, but this will be another upgrade ideally in the future, where now you can have different types of transactions cost different gas costs. And so for a lighter transaction, it's a lighter gas cost. And then it goes back to our original idea of the transactions need to be obviously secure. That's number one. They need to be fast. They need to be predictable so low cost, but predictable in terms of low cost. So this is a huge differentiator from our EVM, and what we're trying to do with a lot of what we're doing here on EOS is not just have that low cost, but that reliable low cost. So if you look at EOSCC, the video earlier, the interview earlier, one of the reasons why they chose is for that predictable low cost. Predictability is very important for businesses. Now, what we've seen with the EVM is that it's not predictable if you don't actually account for different use cases. We knew this before, but now what we've done is we've had organic test cases of heavy usage and heavy weight of that usage. And so now we have a better data accumulation of, okay, when it's this type of transaction and the network is running at full pin, here's the cost. When this type of transaction is running at full pin, here's the better cost. And now you can start to set your different thresholds for each. And so ultimately what you can get with that is still super low cost, but predictable for your use case.
So the biggest, you mentioned it. So the result of the GUI being increased was people doing transactions that don't require storage. And most transactions don't require storage unless you're deploying a smart contract, which on Ethereum-based chains, minting an NFT is the same. You're deploying a smart contract for every NFT. So that's where the storage comes in. In traditional Ethereum, like the EVM standard, it doesn't differentiate gas costs based on whether or not it has storage. It bases it all on how much computation is being used. So this mechanism actually came up way back in the Trust EVM days, but then it got shelved for a little bit until we saw the real world data. So right now, if you're doing a swap, you are paying a little bit more of a premium than you maybe should, and that's because it needs to account for the most expensive potential transaction that could happen, and that's the storage. It's like the NFTs. In the very next EVM upgrade, this is the highest priority right now. The next EVM upgrade will have I don't know if they're not dynamic gas fees because the gas fee is still stable. So under congestion, the gas fee will be the same as when it's not under congestion. But you won't be punished for having a non-storage transaction, let's say.
Well,
So
you're
you'll
not right now too, because we do have that functionality right now of the gas cost was increased and then it was decreased. So we did add a particular function so that the gas can now be dynamically set and it doesn't require that much.
But it's still
consensus to be able
stable.
to do so. But it has been brought back down. It is not set at 900 right now because there's no event that we know of that is going to consume that much. If it were to be the case, because obviously this is permissionless, somebody deploys something and we start to see that it's not abusing, but it's consuming more, we'd be able to go back and turn it up. But it has been brought down basically. So no, you're not wasting currently. Is I guess just the point of clarification I wanted to make.
Yeah. So but either way,
but it's all manual. The idea is to automate all of this that we just talked about.
Yeah. It is. So we do have, I don't know if you'd even call it a roadmap, but our product team did put together a list of all of the next, let's say, 8 to 10 EVM features. There's not dates attached to them necessarily, but for the next release, there are 2 major features that they want to ship out. And the most important one right now is having a gas fee that kind of understands whether or not storage is being used, and it has different pricing based on that. So that is a top priority, and it's based on what we learned in real life situations from these inscription minting events.
Yep. And I mean, just those inscription events as well. Like the first one was completely organic. We had no idea this was going to happen.
It happened on a weekend.
and the network was able to meet that demand. And to put it in perspective, do you recall what number it was? I think it was between 18 to 24 million within a 24-hour period in terms of actions. Transactions, and it was, but so depending on how you look at it, because some people just did the calculation of when it started 24 hours later, but when it started it wasn't at peak. So if you take the top 24 hours, I think it was something like 24 million. And putting that in perspective, we found that BSC did 32 million, I think is the current record, but this was a planned event. And so EOS, without even trying, without even knowing that this was going to happen, so completely organic, people not prepared, not everybody running 5.0 nodes because it had literally just been released. We found a bug. Actually needed this was quite chaotic in the background. The EVM even shut down for a period of time, and still we got
the EVM did not shut down. The EVM did not shut down.
The block explorers, the
RPC nodes, off-chain infrastructure.
But the idea is, with all of this, and still we got to do 24 million. And so it just showcases the power of what the engineers built. Amazing product.
Liam, pull up that the chart that shows that one. So out of all of these are the top EVMs. So EOS isn't included in this list, unfortunately, but EOS, without any heads up, no preparation, is number 2 on this list. The only one that's higher is BNB.
It was a planned event.
It was a planned event. Their gas fee dropped right before it happened. They had a press release ready, so it was kind of a planned event. But with this one, even at the 17.65 on EVM, I can't remember the exact number.
Prices did not go up. The network did not shut down.
And it wasn't anywhere near capacity.
No.
So
we will at some point. We've been talking about planning an event, actually planning this so that we can test the nodes and doing some kind of campaign of some sort that would incentivize people to stress test the network, but in a real live organic situation. Just to be able to see what could EOS handle, and it would be multiples of what we were able to do. I don't have numbers, but it wouldn't surprise me that we're able to get at least more than double what we got before, if not more than double, like double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, whatever it may be. Then we had plenty of capacity.
Yeah, so I think that is something. So I think maybe before the Echo, we kind of, there were a couple of inscription projects lined up by labs, and that was the goal, and it still is a future goal of we will break that BNB record easily, and not even hitting 100% capacity. What it really requires is a project that has enough momentum and influencers and marketing to really incentivize end users to come in and spend gas, essentially. Because to do those 17.65 million EVM transactions, it consumed at a 150 GUI gas price, it consumed over 100,000 EOS of gas, for example, over a very short window. So now to break the BNB record, it would require at least double that. The gas fees are a little bit higher now. So a project needs to come in, or maybe multiple projects doing their inscription events at the same time, but it will take a little bit of coordination in the background. It could still be organic. It just needs to have the marketing oomph behind it to really draw in
there could also be some kind of refund. Like if it's a planned event and the idea is to stress test it, it could be that the gas fees are being repaid. Now, obviously the system will take its 1% or its 0.5% or 1% or whatever it is. Like there are costs that cannot be avoided and that's maybe where there's a refund of some sort, like, partnership of some sort. But on the end user point, I believe that there is a way for incentivizing miners to go through this and basically them having no cost other than perhaps their actual hardware costs or electricity costs or something like that most likely stays on you because it's very difficult to figure out, well, you owe me 17 cents for the electricity I used in the last 2 hours in your test. So limited in that sense. But yes, there is a way, I believe, that we can create something to actually stress test it without costing the 100, 200, 500,000 EOS.
So that brings up something else that occurred since the last live stream is EOS Labs has fully taken over the economics of the EOS EVM. So they're controlling the GUI. So whenever the GUI goes up and down, they're controlling that. And also the gas fees accumulated. So far, all of the gas fees have basically just been used to buy up more RAM. But there are things being discussed of, like you said, maybe using gas fees as incentives to do kickbacks to the smart contract developers or the inscription events. So if I'm an inscription project,
a certain KPI. Yeah.
And this is being seen on Phantom. So Phantom kind of invented this back in May last year, where like if you're a DEX or a smart contract developer, maybe a random number generator, every amount of gas that goes through your contract, the smart contract developer can get, I don't know what it is, let's say a 10 or 15% kickback of the gas consumed by their smart contract. So there are things out there that are being looked at. Nothing's been announced, nothing's like official, but there are different models. And when you think about an inscription event could be seen as almost like a fundraising model or a token distribution model. So if a project doing an inscription could get a percentage of the gas fees back somehow, whether through a grant or through directly from the gas fees, I'm not sure that mechanism's been decided yet. It could be a way for the inscription project itself to kind of raise capital through the inscription event itself.
Yep. Yeah. We're seeing with inscriptions right now anyways, it's kind of a new token, a fair token launch. It's a different mechanism to be able to, I guess, ultimately maybe create a snapshot to be able to determine who participated, who didn't, but all provable on chain. So it is pretty interesting.
It's even more fair. So EOS EVM, it does have that. It's dynamic in the sense that labs through their multi-sig account or key or whatever could increase the fees, but they're not dynamic in the sense that like Yves puts a transaction in the mempool and I could jump him and skip ahead of him by paying more gas. You cannot do that on the EOS EVM. And that's why whenever there's inscription events on other chains, you often see the gas fees go 15, 20x because everyone's racing to the finish line of trying to mint as many of these inscriptions as they can. On the EVM and EOS native also, if you're doing an inscription there, you can't jump the line. There is no way to pay a higher fee to jump ahead of people. So it really is a fair token distribution model. And then it kind of even ties back to the Bitcoin L2 is like, what could the differentiating features be for this? And one of the things that is being decided on, I'm pretty sure there is a consensus on supporting like ordinals. So having not just being able to transfer Bitcoin, because there's different bridges that have Bitcoin, whether they're centralized or decentralized. So like WBTC, for example, it exists. You could have that on Ethereum, but there's not really a trustless way to move ordinals or inscriptions from Bitcoin to and from other scalable chains where you could potentially have decentralized exchanges and access to liquidity on them. So it kind of ties into this whole in being in an inscription chain and like how could EOS differentiate itself and really latch on to this narrative that it's not that we're ahead of it, but it's still ongoing and current, and no one else is really trying to find the things that no one else is doing that only EOS is capable of. And that's really one of the things that I see with the L2. Obviously, there's smarter people than me working on it, but the one thing I keep seeing is the support for the BRC20s and the Ordinals and things like that, which are inscriptions. That's what kicked off the inscription boom on the EVM chains, was the Bitcoin inscriptions.
And yeah, I guess inscriptions, so it depends how you look at them, right? Like inscriptions, from EOS's point of view, are pretty dinky. What it added as functionality to Bitcoin's like, but we've had this forever. This is nothing. Yeah. But it doesn't matter whether we could do it before. It's the fact that there are people out there that are hyped about something, that maybe we can go and meet them and offer some of that, take some of that market share or whatever, regardless of, hey, actually, you could have done this forever on EOS. It's just a memo field. Like, what is this? Like, we've had better functionality forever. But that's not the point. You're missing the point. Yes, EOS is better. We understand that. People out there need to have a particular use case, and you need to meet them where they are, not just tell them that they're stupid because they're not using what we've had forever. And this is what we're this is what EVM does. This is what this idea of a BTC do. It's meeting the market potentially where it is, instead of trying to get everybody to meet us where we are, which clearly the market has shown it does not care that much about. There are limitations there. It's not just about the tech. There is a balance there that needs to exist.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Inscriptions, even on EVMs, the fact you need an indexer to use it, I think it's cool to do it. Maybe a snapshot.
It's a joke. A lot of this is off chain. Like, it's a joke. It's a joke, but it's not about whether it's a joke or not. There's interest out there. There's good traction. It creates narrative. It creates momentum, and this is key. A lot of this, we're still so nascent in this industry. A lot of the majority is still speculation. The majority is still fluff. It's all garbage. But if you want to survive until it's not garbage, you need to do something in the meantime. You need to be relevant. Otherwise, you will simply just fall out of place because you're not relevant. You're not meeting the market where it's at. And that's extremely complex. It's not that easy. So I'm saying that now. And if it were that simple, obviously we'd have already done it. Well, everybody would have done it, right? Everybody's trying to figure this out. And we're all competing for market share, but with different resources, right? So EOS also can't play the same game that other people are playing. So some people are saying, why don't you do XYZ? Well, that would be nice. I'd love to be able to do that. Or if the network was in a position to do that. The reality is we're competing against people that are way better funded than we are, that don't have the history that we have. And they've got their own challenges, but they're backed differently. It's just comparing apples to oranges. And so we need to play the game, so to speak, differently than other people. If we try to play it in the same way that others are playing, we will lose at that game because we're not coming from the same position. We're not coming with the same amount of resources, with the same history, with the same backing, etc. And so for EOS, we're always having to look at things very differently than others within our capacity, and that is one of our strengths. Obviously, if it were that simple, we'd also be higher, but it is one of our strengths in terms of resiliency, of being able to do a lot with very little consistently, and just not going away, basically.
Was there anything else you wanted?
I don't know. I mean, we talked about BTCL2, we talked about RAM, we talked about RAMs, Leap 6.0, Leap 5.0. I was following along in the background for a few questions. I didn't really see anything. There's a lot of chatter, but I didn't really see anything. But if you have anything that you noticed, please, bring it up. Otherwise, I mean, we're well over the time that we were allocated. Some people even dropped in the background telling us, all right, I'm done. So unless you've got something specific, I think this is where we end it.
Well, I think Steph needs to come on and do a contest.
There you go. Steph is still here.
Whoa,
awesome.
He's here.
And he's in high resolution. He's not
here. I'm in high res.
Fiber.
Glad to hear it.
He's
Wasn't
real.
sure what I'd look like. But wow, guys, that was a great conversation. Epic Big Beard Banter segment. I think best of all time for me. Talking about multiple EVMs running on the EOS mainnet at the same time. Bitcoin L2. Not too sure exactly on the details, but it's exciting anyways. RAM action was very exciting. That was awesome to get a nice recap of everything that's been going on there. And then the EVM inscriptions event, all of that. Looking forward to the organized event where everyone tries to hammer the network, and we try to get some awesome graphs out of it. Looking forward to all of that. So that was great, guys. Before we wrap it up, we're going to do the Wheel of Fortune, and we're going to draw our winner for the Pomelo Bounties gift certificate. Let's see here. All right, and then we'll wrap it up. So I'm going to let you guys go, and I'll finish this off on my own, guys. Thanks a lot for everything today, and I'll see you guys in a month. All right. Let's get the Wheel of Fortune here on screen. Now, we're only going to let one entry per person, although if we let all the entries, that's what the wheel would look like. Shout out to Nova Crypto.
Yeah, baby, yeah.
For all the engagement today. And let's spin the wheel. Zafir. Congrats. So check out in the chat. Andrew will let you know how to claim your prize and be on your way to creating a Pomelo bounty. All right. So that's going to wrap it up today. If you want more EOS action, you want to join the conversation, join the community, join us on Telegram in the EOS Global Chat. Take part of the weekly EOS Lounge every Wednesday at 8 p.m. UTC. Make sure to follow the ENF on Twitter and all the other socials that are linked in the chat. Thank you for everyone that joined. And until next time, let's go EOS!